All right, welcome to Pensare Basketball's not so weekly edition. We're gonna have Kenyon here. He's a special guest. He's been on the show before, and we're gonna talk everything that you want to talk about, which is obviously, if you're a Raptor fan right now, it's Kevin Durant. It's Durant fever in Toronto, and we're gonna talk about how he got here, how the Raptors are even in a position to be able to make a trade for Kevin Durant and not gut their whole roster. We're gonna talk about what that offer might look like. And we'll talk about whether or not the Raptors even have to make an offer. Maybe they can just stick it out. So, Kenyon, how are you doing? How are you feeling about this whole Kevin Durant thing? Excited?
Well, it's like you said the other day, it's anxiety-inducing. It's a little bit nerve-wracking. What do they call it? The F5ers, where they're just constantly refreshing every single screen. I haven't been to that extent, but
I have.
Been a bit nervous.
I basically waited for the line to change last night. It was plus 350, 300, 350. I'm like, man, if it goes to 200, I'm staying up all night. It never moved. It stayed at 250, and I just fell asleep refreshing my screen, waiting for it to change. Look, it's interesting, right? Anytime your franchise is in the news as one of the favorites to land a player like this is why the NBA works the way it works. This is why this is a year-round league, okay? Players don't play year-round, but we have the draft. We have trade rumors. Then we have trade season. Then we have, free agency period. We have all of these other things that are meant to engage fans. And I think it's a little harmless, but these are real people, right? Scottie Barnes had to block the word Brooklyn, KD, Kevin Durant from his Twitch chat last night because it's so crazy. And because these athletes are out there and they're on social, they're on Twitter, whatever, they're getting hundreds and hundreds. Dude, I'm not famous at all. I'm getting hundreds and hundreds of notifications every hour. So it's crazy. But let's talk about first, how did the Raptors get to this point, right? So first, of course, they've drafted extremely well, right? Pascal, Siakam, every piece that Brooklyn may want in this trade is a piece that the Raptors acquired via the draft, right? That's OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Scottie Barnes last year, right? So there's a value, of course, in scouting. And this is why you scout so well. Masai Ujiri has talked about assets before. He's talked about, waiting for the right moment. They tried to do this with Giannis. They built up that cap space. They put this roster in place. They gave themselves maximum flexibility, signing these 2-year, 3-year contracts. When's the last time the Raptors signed a 4-year contract? OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam. Those are the two guys, right? They don't do it. They don't do it for everyone because flexibility is a very important thing for this franchise. So now we're in a position where we are one of the very few teams that A, have all of our draft capital, B, do not have a player who was signed using that dreaded rookie exception, right? The rookie max exception, because as hopefully everyone has gleaned by now, Pascal Siakam signed a 4-year deal, not a 5-year deal. So if you look at his deal relative to Ben Simmons and Devin Booker and all the other guys who are not allowed to be traded right now for Kevin Durant, Siakam has 1 year missing off the end. And that's the difference. That's why he can be traded to a team that already has Ben Simmons. And they've built their assets up by developing them. Right?
Yeah.
They put in the hours, the money, the countless resources, the man hours through training and assistant coaches to build these players up and develop them. This was a really big part of last year, and allowing this free-flowing offense is allowing these guys to show what they can do offensively. And suddenly you have OG Anunoby, once considered maybe only defense guy, now average 18 points per game. Suddenly everyone wants him, even though he kind of came off a down year. But if you're an opposing team, you're trying to sell this guy to your fan base as a big acquisition for future picks and a young player, it's a lot easier to sell that with the raw number of 18 points per game, 24-year-old who scored 18 points per game last year, and sell your fan base on the hype so that they can buy the tickets and they can continue supporting your team, right? So that's kind of where we're at with why the Raptors are in this position.
Yeah.
The Brooklyn Nets are in this position because they took a very different route.
What this is proving to me is that the super team era doesn't work, and that in many ways we didn't really respect LeBron and Pat Riley and that whole situation maybe as much as we should have. Beyond that, it hasn't really worked. I don't consider the Golden State Warriors the same because they basically brought a guy in, and there was basically a chance, a gap, a market inefficiency that allowed them to take advantage of a situation. The Brooklyn Nets, on the other hand, they cleared cap space for these guys and angled for these guys, and they got them. But when you clear 2 max spots for guys instead of having homegrown talent, the problem is that you end up in a situation where if there's anyone that gets hurt, you lack depth. You lack you in the East, as we see, it's really hard to get through the East because the East, as I say, is a meat grinder. So to me, I feel that it's important to kind of build more closer to the Raptors rather than going, the way of the superstar.
That's hard, right? I mean, what the Raptors did was really hard, right? Specifically, I think because, number one, it requires a little bit of luck. It requires a top-down restructuring, as you mentioned, of infrastructure, right? And it requires patience, which is something that not a lot of GMs have. The most patient GM in the world, care to take a guess? The most patient GM in the world is it's between Masai Ujiri and Danny Ainge. Those two are the most patient GMs on the planet. They will wait and wait and wait. They will watch the paint dry, and they will not make a move that screws themselves over. And look, the Nets were in a very interesting position where they had to choose whether or not to clear their entire roster that had just made the playoffs, had been very competitive, right? D'Angelo Russell, that entire team, Jared Allen, right? Or go for a generational talent who was coming your way and had a few demands, like DeAndre Jordan. And I think what happened, that really screwed them over, in my opinion, is that Kevin Durant didn't play that first year. And that immediately vaulted Kyrie into a sort of leadership position within the roster because KD needed him to be competitive. And if the Nets had made the playoffs, I think, Durant was potentially thinking about coming back to play.
Yes,
and that was
I remember that.
all year, right? And so they needed to be competitive. And I think that vaulting of Kyrie into a leadership position is just not a place where winning teams want to be. We saw it in Cleveland. He wasn't a leader. We saw it with the teams get better when he leaves. For the most part, they do, right?
Not right away, but
not right away, but him as a leader, right? Like when LeBron came in, they became a very different team. And it's not just because LeBron is LeBron, right? The greatest player of our generation, but also because that leadership mantle was transferred from Kyrie to LeBron. You're not going to lead a locker room with LeBron James, right? And I don't know if Kevin Durant ever took that leadership back, but I have not known Kevin Durant over the years to be a bad leader. I've actually found him to be a very admirable leader, a guy who leads by example. Maybe not the most confrontational guy, right? Maybe not the guy who can set something straight, but he keeps it straight. If he's given a clean room, he'll keep it clean, is what I'm saying. And I don't think he was given a clean room when he came back. And so, if you're the Nets management right now, here's where I see it from the Brooklyn Nets side, right? You need a scapegoat. You need a fall guy. When you have 3 players this talented, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, when they play together, that was an all-time offensive rating. But they're not the most ideal fit next to each other. I see this as a pretty simple thing, right? I see it as new ownership, right? New ownership. Every time you go through the league, history of the league, right? Whenever there's a new owner, there's a bunch of people around them. They know they don't know what they're doing. They're probably big shots in some other business, some other, thing. They come in thinking they know everything. Mark Cuban, first move. What was the first move that Mark Cuban made?
I think he traded Steve Nash. Am I remembering this?
No, Rafe LaFrance. Traded for Rafe LaFrance's contract and then tried to justify why Rafe LaFrance was the greatest freaking acquisition, right? We don't worry about the money, right? We don't worry about the money or the dollars. I remember that. Like, look at Vivek Ranadive, Nick Stauskas. We need Stauskas here. Anyone have Stauskas? That just got traded again. Every time that guy gets traded, I think about Vivek Ranadive screaming his name and telling me why he's going to be, people don't talk about this enough because Buddy Hield actually turned out pretty good.
Yeah.
But I swear to God, Vivek Ranadive said that Buddy Hield was the next Steph Curry. That shit happened. Okay. He's a phenomenal shooter, but he's not Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Every new owner comes in like this. They're not always like Vivek, right? They're not always super intrusive and trying to meddle with everything. Sometimes they're just dumb and people take advantage of them. Sometimes they're really smart, but they don't have a voice. They think that they have to lean on people. They hire the wrong people.
Yeah.
Because, when you're hiring these people, most people who are GMs would tell you it's a really hard job. I've talked to a few GMs. They'll tell you it's night and day, hardest job ever, right? You gray out so fast. It's like President Obama, term 1, term 2, same shit being a GM, right? You're like president of a team, right? Nonstop. But when you're hiring these new guys, and most of these new owners, they come in, they hired a new GM, new president, whatever, they all have solutions. They're like, oh yeah, don't worry, I'll fix that easy. This guy doesn't have a jump shot, we'll fix that. We don't have draft picks, don't worry, we'll fix that. You get the job, and now it's somebody else's fault. And this is where I see Joe Tsai, Sean Marks, right? I see incompetent leadership. You don't. Look, these are kids, relatively speaking. Right?
Yeah.
You don't trust players to make moves, okay? And then blame those same players when those moves don't work out. The Brooklyn Nets are one of the leakiest organizations that I've ever covered in my life. I have found out so much about this team through people that I know in the New York media area over the last, and they're all credible things coming out of this organization, and they're sending out Woj every 5 minutes on ESPN to say, oh, by the way, the Brooklyn Nets don't have to do anything. Yeah, they do. They do, because it's already out, and now they're doing damage control. This is a nightmare of an organization. And I don't blame Kevin Durant one bit for wanting to get out of there. And I think that a lot of people are blaming him because he's just a really easy scapegoat. Yeah. He's really easy. He's sensitive. He cares way too much what people think. He's on Twitter. He's active. He's accessible. He just feels like a guy who's easy to target, right? For a lot of the stuff. And now it's, he signed and he committed to us and now he's leaving us. What if he hadn't signed? What if he just left for nothing? Now you don't have anything.
Yeah.
And so instead of saying, hey, he did us a favor by signing in our nightmare of an organization, which we'd previously proven that we really don't have a lot of competent, ideas to put good things around this guy. Now he's the fall guy. Kyrie's the fall guy because he won't be vaccinated. But you don't have any ownership for the fact that you pretty much ruled him out of playing all the road games, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not here to debate vaccination stuff with you, but people have a right to have an opinion about this. Right?
I do think that it goes a little bit further than just the vaccination stuff for Kyrie. So from what I heard, and I could be wrong, but I heard that so Kyrie didn't really like the James Harden acquisition before it happened.
Okay.
James Harden was liked more. Like in terms of the fans, in terms of the, him endearing himself to that population, they liked him more.
Right.
And I don't think that rubbed Kyrie the right way. Which you can understand that. And I don't necessarily blame Kyrie, but Kyrie doesn't seem like the person that would be able to handle that in the most mature way.
Okay, but I mean, look, at the end of the day, last I checked, right, Kevin Durant did not make a call to Houston and say, hey, we're offering you X, Y, Z and all these picks, right? They made a choice that they wanted these three guys together.
Yeah. Because
I'll tell you what it comes down to, okay? It comes down to a dick measuring contest with the New York Knicks, okay? That's really what it is. Yeah. It's about beating the Knicks in the New York market. It's dominating the market. They cannot deal with the fact that they are never going to be more relevant than the New York Knicks. And they thought they could do it by signing Steve Nash as head coach, bringing in Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant. Guess what, man? I'm from New York. We still care about the Knicks more than we care about the Nets. We're never going to care about the Nets that way. And that's just the truth. That's 100% truth. And you can't just move a team that's been in New Jersey. Like, I grew up in New Jersey, too. I remember being a Nets fan. I hated it. It sucked. It's not, like, no offense. Sorry, Net fans. It's just not, it's not this, you can rebrand it, change the color, change the city.
Yep.
It's still the Nets. And the Knicks are still the Knicks, man. Like, you don't grow up with Knick culture. And like, yes, they suck for, like, so long. But, man, we just got Jalen Brunson. Things are looking up, right? God, Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle. Fuck Kyrie. Anyways, no, the point that I'm making is this is all about dominating the headlines. And they thought they could do that by acquiring James Harden. This is children blaming other children. Okay.
Yep.
And that's what it is. And I don't blame Kevin Durant for 1 second for wanting out of that dumpster fire of a situation. I don't blame James Harden for wanting out of that dumpster fire. And quite frankly, I don't even blame Kyrie for wanting out of the dumpster fire, even if I think that he created the dumpster fire. I feel they gave him the gasoline to do it. And that's as poetically as I would phrase that.
Yeah.
I believe that they gave him the gasoline to do it. They empowered him. You know what? If I told you tomorrow that my child, who is 3 years old, is an asshole because he ate a tub of ice cream, what would you ask me?
You got to handle that.
Yeah, you got to handle that. Why is your child having access to a tub of ice cream? What kind of a parent are you, right? So if your star players are in the news, in the media, telling them that they're part of they're part of the decision-making group and shit, and they're undercutting you in interviews, you got to handle that.
Yeah.
Kyle Lowry ghosted the Raptors front office for an entire offseason after they dealt DeMar DeRozan. I don't remember hearing that Kyle Lowry was an asshole in the media. That shit barely got out. If you weren't close to the team, you didn't know how bad that got. Yeah. But it got really bad, right?
You and I have talked about that a couple of times, actually.
Yeah. DeMar DeRozan demanded a trade. Do you know that?
I did not know that. I did not know that.
Yes, DeMar DeRozan had demanded a trade after the Kyle Lowry, to the Knicks thing was about to be done. He was on the phone with his agent, ready to demand a trade right there. And it just all fell apart, and then we got We the North.
Yeah.
Man, this shit doesn't get out.
Yeah.
You know, when Woj was tweeting all of the second round picks, you remember that?
Wasn't ours. Yeah, he didn't.
Pick 29.
30,
was it 31,
Chris
32.
Haynes was the one. So
yeah.
it wasn't any of the major guys. Shems, no. Woj, no. So yeah, it's
right.
Yeah.
And you know what? Everything you're hearing from about KD and the Raptors, it's not coming from the Raptors. The Raptors are, in my opinion, in all of the years that I've watched the NBA, this is the least leaky front office I've ever seen in my life. I've seen one that compares to it, but it's
I'll say one thing. They do leak things to Grange at times on purpose. Whether it's true or not, they definitely do. So
yes, they do. It's really funny every time. Yes. So the thing is that, it's all a ploy. And I think if you're the Raptors here, you have a real decision to make. You have a decision in front of you. Superstars, and that's what Kevin Durant is. He's a superstar. Okay, he's a super duper star. He's 8th all-time playoff scorer, right? Youngest guy on that list in the top 8. There's nobody even close, right? He'll probably finish his career as a top 3 playoff scorer of all time. If things go well, maybe top 2, If things go really well and he ages gracefully because he's had a couple of years off now with this Achilles thing, maybe he's a serviceable role player in his early 40s because he loves the game so much. He might chase LeBron and actually make it. I don't know if LeBron's going to make the playoffs again with the Lakers and Russell Westbrook. So so you have this real opportunity here to acquire a superstar, and you have a competent team and a really great head coach, and all of these fringe prospects that may pop on the fringes, like Justin Champagnie and Delano Benton and Malachi Flynn and all these young guys, and you just drafted Christian Koloko, and you've got this incredible scouting department that finds second round and undrafted gems every single year. That being said, what do you offer the Brooklyn Nets?
So
Kevin Durant.
Yeah. So the thing,
being your best offer.
Yeah. Well, so I'll say this before I get to there. Sure. The reason why I would put the offer, and then some people would say that this offer is low. I think that it's a fair offer, is because, like you hinted at. Okay, I asked this before, but it's
okay. I need to know before you carry on.
Okay. OG,
you're not letting go. You're not letting go of Kem Birch, are you?
Yeah, we're holding on to Malachi.
We can't.
Eric Flynn
can't let go of,
must be here.
Yeah, we need to. At any cost, we must hold on to Svi and Kem. I need these one-syllable first-name guys to stay, okay? All the rest of these guys can go to hell. Okay, what's your offer?
So I the reason why my offer is the way that it is because the worst thing to be in sports and the worst thing to be in New York sports is irrelevant. It is
okay,
and that goes into the whole dick measuring contest that you were talking about. You can't do it. They just want to be next year. They want to be better than the Knicks. That's all they want.
Right.
So my best offer would be OG, Trent, and Flynn, and I would haggle
That's
on.
your best offer.
Yes, yeah, I would go. There. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I think you could swap Trent for VanVleet. That is another option. That gives him the leadership as well. But you'd have to come way down on the pick, or at least add extra protections. It wouldn't be the same, 4 or 5 picks. It just couldn't be if you're giving up.
So your offer, so really your best offer, what I'm gathering is Fred VanVleet.
Yep.
OG Anunoby.
Yep.
And a couple of picks and maybe a couple of swaps. So you're like talking maybe maximum, 2023.
Yeah.
Let's work this out. 2023 unprotected, 2025 top 5 protected, 2024 swap, 2026 swap.
Yep.
So that's where we're at. That's your final offer.
I would potentially add another pick. But I would protect once you get
a second round pick.
Well, once you get out to what we're at 27, right? So
yeah.
At that point, you have to lottery protect it for obvious reasons.
Well, we already talked. Okay, so let's lay this out again.
Yeah,
we've got Fred VanVleet, All-Star, Freddie VanVleet. All right, yep. Future All-Star, OG Anunoby, one of my favorite players in the world. We got Kem, Old Man Birch. Okay.
Yep.
Malachi Flynn. All right.
Okay.
We got 2023 unprotected. So if this whole thing, Kevin Durant, blows up on our face, they end up with a lottery pick. 2024 pick swap. 2025 top 5 protected. 2026 pick swap. 2027 lottery protected. Which, if it doesn't convey, maybe turns into 2 seconds. Sure. 2028, 2029.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's the structure.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're getting back Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
So let's see. From a salary cap and I mean from a salary cap, I've seen so many funny mock trades, man. It's like people trying to give away like the 15th guy, the 14th guy, the 13th, just going up the roster, trying to keep their starters and just adding Kevin Durant and like, hey man, we'll just fill our bench with G Leaguers and just keep Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
It's like, exactly. Bro, like this is not the Indiana Pacers. They're not about to give you like, okay, I get that, and I think that's a competent offer. I really do. I think you get an all-star back, you get a young. It's literally like if you read out what Woj just reported in terms of what they're looking for, that satisfies every single thing. It matches on salary.
Yeah.
Even if I think they're probably taking back a little more than they'd like to with Kem.
I would even be okay with remove Kem, but you can give them.
I really want to get rid of him. Can we get rid of him? I think this is a plus for us. No offense to Kem. And I know you were injured last year, but we need some space under this luxury tax. Okay. By the way, I think a lot of people don't realize Thaddeus Young is also available for trade.
Yeah, yes. So if I did look at it on Fanspo. If you did Thaddeus Young, then you can't add Flynn because it's just a little bit too much. So that's why.
Okay. Color me heartbroken.
And I think that they prefer to keep that, which, I don't think you'd complain at that.
I think the Raptors are weirdly high on Malachi Flynn. I mean, we'll see. He's not on the Summer League roster, which I thought was...
Is he not?
I don't think so. Oh, I didn't see him on it.
Okay.
Interesting. That's shocking to me. He should be. DJ Wilson's on our Summer League. Our analytics leader for everything. If you go to Basketball Reference, the best player on our team this year was DJ Wilson, who got cut twice.
Yes.
For being. It's just the Raptors like, fuck analytics. We don't care about his 5,000% true shooting. Okay, so that's your best offer. I'll lay out my best offer. It's gonna start with Pascal Siakam because it's got to. I think. Look, there's 2 ways to go about this. I talked about it on this channel before. Well, there's 3 ways to go about it. We're not going to talk about the third one because I'm not going to speak shit to existence. We're not talking about We're not talking about Big Brook here. So
Yeah.
offer number one, in my opinion, it starts with Siakam and Trent.
Yeah.
Right. I think in this case, right now, I heard Blake Murphy and a lot of people have pontificated on this potential of keeping Siakam with Durant, and how Siakam is just this incredible guy with Durant. And I would argue that last year, what we saw prior to Siakam coming back was Scottie was a lot like Siakam. In a lot of ways, he was running in transition, beating guys off, operating out of the mid post. He's a solid passer. He slashes. He, all of the areas that these two, I mean, they work together really well because they made it work, because one of them would space out, one of them, but they kind of operate in the same way. I think they're interchangeable. I really do. They both can play big backup point guard, right? So I'm not saying they can't play together, because they're both extremely smart players who are extremely portable, right? But I think that if you're super worried about not having that secondary ball handler, secondary creator skill set next to Durant, if you get rid of Siakam, I think you have that with Barnes. So I would say Gary and Scott. Oh no,
You
Gary and
said
Siakam. Oh man, Gary and Siakam would be my first option. First offer, and I would say that also because I have maybe some reservations about Siakam getting much better than he is right now.
Yeah.
He could get better, and I also have reservations about signing Gary Trent back to a bigger contract than the one he's already on, because I think that his numbers inflate his value, and his age gives a sort of inflationary value to his impact. I read a tweet from him yesterday complaining that he didn't receive all defense votes, which I thought was criminally insane. But that's how good he thinks he is. So that's going to factor in when he comes up for a. Are you not hearing me?
No. I'm just think that's
yeah.
I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that was great. It's like, how are you the worst? You're the worst defender on a 15-man roster, and you expected all defense votes because you got a few steals.
He got hunted in the playoffs so much, and it was not because he had a lack of Imodium for the first few games, right? Like it went beyond that. Like once Philly figured that out, it was I think
it was curtains for us. It was curtains. He became unplayable. Tyrese, James Harden, everyone blew past him. I think Danny Green blew past him once. It was crazy. It was insane to watch, and it was hard to watch for the Raptors because that you need his offense, and you've hit him so well on defense. But it feels like once Doc Rivers figured out that this guy was basically useless on defense, they just spammed him in pick and roll, and he made wrong decision after wrong decision. And even when he made the right decision, he was either too slow to react or just too small to contest. It just doesn't work, right? People complain about Fred VanVleet, and that I've been very critical of Fred VanVleet. Fred VanVleet is such a better defender than Gary Trent Jr. It's not even freaking funny. Like, when I think Fred VanVleet would be a better defender. Absolutely. Exactly. I think Fred VanVleet would be a better defender than Gary Trent Jr. if he was 5'8". I'm not even kidding. He has better habits. He's smarter. He has better habits. He has like all the tools to be a really good dig defender and help defender. He does a lot of things to get you possessions. That's really what the defense is. It's lowering opponent percentages. Like, he does things that are good on defense. I'm not like crazy about getting rid of Fred VanVleet anymore. I'm more like I need to get rid of Gary Trent. So that's my first offer. My second offer, which I'm not happy with, and I wouldn't be super thrilled about it, would be Fred plus OG plus a bigger pick package, because you're not giving up a star, right? And I think that package probably works better for Brooklyn, which is it's pretty much similar to the package that you have, right? It's the same package.
It's
I think that package works for Brooklyn depending on how high they are on Ben Simmons. Because if they are really high on Ben Simmons coming back, which they shouldn't be, but if they are, for whatever reason, because they're crazy, and they want to do this whole Milwaukee Bucks part 2 and actually play out this experiment of, everyone has been saying for years that Ben Simmons needs his own team. Okay, everyone. They're like, if you run this guy out, like if you take Joel Embiid out of the post and you just give this guy the ball, and we've seen it in spurts in Philly, it's not like there's no sample size of this. He's been dominant at times when he's just been allowed to play center / point guard, point center, right?
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about a team around Ben Simmons next year and the scraps that you get back for Kyrie Irving, I think Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby are incredible pieces to put around that. So in this case, the Nets sort of compromise. They don't get their star, but they technically help the one that they already have become a star.
And you can still sell
Right.
Fred in Brooklyn as a star, coming off an All-Star year.
Well, I think this is the thing, right? Fred VanVleet's value to everyone went up a little bit this year because of his explosive thing. I think it went down after the playoffs, unfortunately. You can mess around with that, be like, oh, he was injured, he wasn't right, he played too many minutes, we're gonna load manage him or something. I don't know, whatever, do it. Right. In this case, I lose my second favorite player and a guy that I really don't care that much about, and I'm happy because get Kevin Durant. I think that deal is great. I think they would probably prefer the first one, just because I think Pascal Siakam plus Ben Simmons almost definitely gets you into the playoffs next year. I think that's a really good one too.
Yeah, so I definitely I hear what you're saying. I really do. And you know how high I am on OG. I we could keep this thing going, honestly.
Yeah.
And we would be fine. I think we would be fine without doing anything. The reason why I think that Pascal Siakam should stay with Scottie, I think it goes beyond just the fact of where Pascal Siakam is right now. First of all, I do think he's going to take a leap, and that's one place where we kind of differ. Is I think that if I were to look at Scottie and I was to look at Siakam and I were to project out 1 year, I think that Scottie will still be behind Siakam. But so Scottie is the second best player on the team today, without question, in my opinion. I think it will be definitively clear that he will be the second best player on the team next year, but still with way more trajectory to go. He's still young. That's my thing, is he's still learning the game. And you can tell that he's patient and he's willing to do what it takes to learn the game from whoever it is. So that's why I don't think that matters. I think why I would rather keep Siakam is I think he's a little bit more durable, first of all. And so if you're going to go up against the East, you're going to try to make it through. You're going to try to load manage a guy like Durant and have a high enough standing. I think that it's a little bit easier to stomach that if you're doing it without OG. And if OG, let's say that there was a little bit of smoke, tiny bit of wisps of smoke to him wanting a bigger role, he gets it.
Right.
So I think that's kind of where I'm at, but also I don't see any reason why Scottie and Pascal can't work together, because to me, you can't have enough playmaking. And no offense to OG, but OG is not that level of a playmaker, and I don't see him developing to that extent of his playmaking ability.
I reference this almost once every 3 podcasts, but I had a conversation with an assistant coach in San Antonio once, and I asked them like how or why they had gotten rid of Rasha Nesterovic. You've probably heard me even talk about this before. And he started to diagram on one of his clipboards exactly why Tim Duncan and Rasha Nesterovic don't work together, how they get in each other's way. I look at Scottie Barnes as a guy who has explosive potential in the mid-range. Right? Mid-post, high post, low post. I like the lane open for him to do stuff there. Create, pitch, make passes, do stuff, get to the line, offensive rebound. He was damn near dominant in stretches, including the playoffs. Some do it in the playoffs as well. Bully ball, 4 or 5 guys, right?
Yeah.
I like Siakam's creation, but you know who's probably a better passer than both those guys right now?
Well, not OG.
Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant's passing game and defense are criminally underrated. Like criminally underrated. I think people see him as a non-defender. He's a really good team defender. He's not he's not digging in like Kawhi. He's not like an on-ball defender, but as a rover, as a guy who just gets deflections, gets blocks,
he's gotten better. That's what I'll say. Compared to OKC,
he was a beast in Texas. Like I remember him blocking like 4 or 5 blocks on a single possession. Like he did things in Texas that told me he could never be a bad defender just because he's so smart.
Yeah.
But I think with the Achilles, you know, it does take certain things away from you.
Yeah.
But I think like with Otto Porter right now, you're finding smart is still smart. You know,
For sure.
You know, and experience is experience. And I think both those guys provide a lot of that. So I think sometimes too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. Right now, I'm not saying that I don't think that Scottie plus Pascal plus KD is like a crazy thing to think about in a fantasy league or in 2K, you know, having these 3 guys that are all huge, probably for their position. One of them is always going to have a mismatch. You can really dominate guys, right? But I think sometimes too much of the same thing can be a bad thing, right? It's like, imagine Kevin Durant. Like, let's say you put the ball in Kevin Durant's hand, which you're going to do a lot, right? Because he's your best player by a country mile on this team. Even next year, even the year after that, nothing that Scottie or Siakam are going to do is going to make it so that they're going to get the last shot. This last shot will be Kevin's to take every time. Oh, definitely not. Like he's.
Oh, I mean, you know, sometimes that happens, right? Where it's like, you know,
Steve Kerr takes a shot from Michael Jordan. Yeah,
exactly.
But in a normal
listen, you know, like Steve Kerr was always just doing Michael a favor, right?
He certainly thought so. But my point, of course, is that now you need shooters around Kevin Durant.
Yeah, and I believe in both of their improvements. I like, and that's just it. I really do.
As shooters,
I don't think that if your defense is good enough, I just think that you need to shoot well enough. Outside of Kevin Durant, because Durant is Durant.
Look at what we saw in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
In Game 6, Scottie was left wide open. Pascal was left loosely contested. When Siakam had the ball, Scottie's defender was helping over on Siakam.
Yep.
God forbid when Gary had the ball or when, you know, OG had the ball, OG had the roughest time in Game 6 because neither of the other 2 guys had any gravity out. So guys were shading off and dumping into the lane. And I think what we just saw with Boston is playing a couple of non-shooters together is disastrous when you go up against a good defense. Okay.
So I hear what you're saying with Boston. I would also say that Tatum needs to take another step in terms of his playmaking and his reads. And that played a big factor. The other thing too is that Durant on defense, if you look back from even OKC days, and he got better, partly because he was around guys like Draymond, but he had times when he could be a bit spacey on defense because he had the long wingspan, because he was very athletic. And, you know, to me, I guess my thing is I don't think that OG can make the step forward to really, for a very specific reason. I just don't believe in his fluidity as an athlete. I think that there's just a limitation there where some guys can just maneuver or dance or whatever, you know, short of him doing, you know, ballet. And I'm serious about that.
Right.
It's just something that I don't think that he has. You just see him run down the floor and he looks awkward. And for that reason, I think that that's what has, you know, made him a really, really low percentile isolation scorer. I think, you know, so it's not that I don't believe in OG. It's just I see the ceiling of OG as probably a little bit lower, but still very, I mean, I've told you, I think that OG reminds me a lot of Ron Artest, right, in terms of the overall game. And I don't think that that should be seen as disrespectful either, because Ron Artest was an all-star.
If you put prime Ron Artest on the Brooklyn Nets last year next to Kyrie and KD,
that's wild.
I'm pretty sure they win a championship. Right?
Yeah.
So this is my point, right?
Yeah.
You need guys. The reason that I like the Otto Porter signing so much, right? The reason that I like the Thad Young signing so much, the reason that even I was on Leo's show and I was telling him that I like Kevin Huerter's signing.
Yep.
I like portable guys. I like guys who don't need to take 5 dribbles to get into their shot. But I also like guys who can take 5 dribbles and get into their shot when they need to. I like guys who can play different styles when needed. I like to know that someone like OG Anunoby can be a post scorer for me, which he showed that he can be,
Yep.
and a hub and a fairly efficient, if not always pretty passer, right? And a one dribble driver and a guy who can space. He's shown all of these things for you. He's never quite put it together in a season, but I like the idea of someone like this next to a guy like Durant, not needing to be that rhythm scorer, but also on the same team as a guy who might have some injury concerns down the line. That's where I stand on that. In terms of an offense in which you have Barnes and Siakam and KD, those other two guys better be snipers. Like those other two guys can't be anything close to Chris Boucher, Thad Young. These guys can't be on the floor with that lineup.
And so,
right?
if we go back, your package did not include Fred VanVleet, correct?
Well, one of them did and one of them didn't. And the reason that I would hold on to Fred VanVleet, as much as I don't like him,
for the shooting,
is because the shooting, the deep shooting, not just shooting. We're talking deep shooting, because we can talk about corner threes like PJ Tucker, but there is a very big difference in the type of gravity that PJ Tucker has as a 30-something% free throw shooter, as 3-point shooter, versus the type of gravity that someone like Fred VanVleet has. Freudian slip, little mini wannabe Steph, right?
Yeah.
Now here I am.
We've talked about this so many times too.
Just 5 months ago, I made a freaking video about bet on yourself, making a joke out of all his things. And here I am advocating that the Raptors, if they get Kevin Durant, I think that Fred VanVleet is your key to unlock that matchup, because he has already shown how dominant he is with a player like that. And I'm not comparing Steph Curry and Fred VanVleet, but I'm saying there's a lot in common with how they play. They've shown, like, look, Fred VanVleet prior to this year, Freddie All-Star season, was a guy who did play off the ball. Right? This is a guy who played off the ball. This is a guy who moved without the ball. This is a guy who was catch and shoot. This is the type of guy you need next to Kevin Durant, man.
Yeah.
Scottie Barnes. I like that next to Kevin Durant as well. He's played with a lot of guys like Scottie Barnes. Now, you and I may think of Scottie as this uber creator and, hyper processing speed, a big ball dominant guard, or downhill, Giannis, future Giannis, or future Magic, or whatever we might think. But right now what he is, he's, in an offense, he can set picks. He can set picks and roll. He can be a short roller. He can be Draymond. I hate that comparison, but in this situation, he can be Draymond, right?
I don't compare him to anyone.
But I mean,
I hear you.
In terms of the type of offenses where we have seen Kevin Durant be successful, find me one that didn't include a lights out shooter.
Yeah.
Right? So when I look at how badly the Brooklyn Nets struggled last year, I'm seeing the spacing issues that they had playing some of the players that they played. And to play two non-shooters with KD, and especially when those two non-shooters have to play 36 minutes. Yep. Scottie's not a fringe prospect. Pascal Siakam is not a G Leaguer anymore, right? These guys, literally all three of them, have to be on the court for at minimum 35 minutes a game to 32 minutes a game. They don't fit. So, to me, this is not an optimal fit.
So in that scenario then, just to recap, you would give up Fred, but you would, I'm assuming you're taking, in the case that you're giving up Fred, you're taking less, or you're giving up less picks, correct? Or in both.
Sorry.
I don't think you outlined your pick packages.
That's true. So to clarify, so my situation would be the first one was Fred plus OG, right?
Okay.
Plus picks. And I think my pick structure would be identical to yours, right?
Okay.
I might
go all the way out to 2027.
I might add unprotected 2023 and 2025 unprotected. I wouldn't top five it and just take the chance and risk that I'm never going to be that bad under this type of ownership, provided something horrible doesn't happen. With the Siakam package, right? I think I would go as high as, I think I would go 2 picks, 1 swap. I think Siakam is more
Okay.
valuable than I think a lot of people give credit for. He's a guy who made All
Yeah.
NBA second team, All NBA third team. He's 28 years old. He has a cleaner bill of health, right? He's on a pretty long contract. This is about as good a player as you're ever going to get back for Kevin Durant. Like, everyone talks about the picks. Like, yes, sometimes that pick situation becomes a disaster for the team that gave them up, and it turns out great. But most of the time, it doesn't. Well, a lot of the times, it doesn't. Okay, we always talk about the disasters because we like to catastrophize and we like to make fun of the teams that gave up those picks. But there are a lot of teams that gave up, 2 years worth of picks, like in 3 years, and those picks ended up being 28 and 25. Okay, sometimes
Right.
it works out really well. And here's, to any fans out there who are like, oh my God, the picks. I want you to go back in any draft, okay, and just pick a random pick, say 24, 25, 18, 17, 14, anything outside of the top 10, and just pluck the players that were picked at that spot and tell me if they're better than a superstar together, right? Like, if we just go for, I don't know, pick 21 or something. You can't cherry pick. You can't just always assume that your team was going to pick the best player picked in that entire draft at 21, but just pick a random pick like 21 and just be like, okay, the 21st pick from 2014, 2016, 2018 does not equal a superstar. It almost never does. It never does, because the draft is a crapshoot. And I think the Raptors have a huge competitive advantage here, which is, and let's talk about that, because here we have outlined our packages, right? And we're on the phone with the Nets, and the Nets are like, we'll think about it, but we got to talk to Phoenix, see what they're doing. But now you mentioned something interesting earlier, and we talked about it off the air, which is why are we talking about this? Why do we even have to do this? Why not just play it out? I read a really funny thing on Real GM. I wanted to talk about it. It just really tickled my fancy. It tickled my brain a little bit. And they said that we cheated on our wives when we won with Kawhi. It was a really strange thing. This guy, he mentioned it, but I'll play this out for you. So basically, he said, we built up this entire program with all these guys that we inherited from the Colangelo era, right? Got rid of the first one, Bargnani, on day one. But we played this out. Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan. Mainly, we kept the core in place, right? If you really think about the core under most of Masai Ujiri's tenure through We the North, that was Jonas Valanciunas, Colangelo guy, DeMar DeRozan, Colangelo guy, right? All these guys were Colangelo guys, right? The only additions really were swapping Ross for Serge Ibaka. That was really like your guy, right? So for the vast majority of it, and of course all the little ancillary pieces around, like Norman Powell, OG Anunoby, whatever. But so I look at that, and they swapped out.
Every GM wants his own stamp.
Sure.
This is my team.
My team, my coach, everything, right? But Masai played it out. He played out the long game.
Popping the big colors.
Right. And by accident, we won.
Yeah.
And they decided to roll it back and to give the core a chance. And personally, I think it was a mistake to some extent. I think it was a mistake to keep rolling out the same thing, same coach, but this is what this team does. They're patient.
I also don't think that this team has plateaued for what it can be on the whole, in terms of the core that we think is the core. I guess we disagree on just Siakam, and that's really it. But the core, let's say, I'll say the core four guys, I don't think that they have reached their potential yet. I really don't.
Right. So, yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't know if I completely agree with you on Fred reaching his potential. I don't know what that next iteration.
I mean, as a
group, yeah.
Group.
Okay.
Yeah.
So effectively, what they were saying was that, hey, we had this opportunity to cheat, and it felt really good. We had Kawhi for a year, and then we left us, right? And then we lost everything. We lost the house. Took us to the cleaner. And then we rebuilt from scratch. We got ourselves back on our feet. And this time it feels a little bit different, because this time the core has been assembled with a lot more thought. The coach in place. I don't think, no matter how cynical a Raptor fan you are, how delusional an armchair GM you are, that there are vocal critics of Nick Nurse. I haven't heard.
There are. They're
Really?
Far and few in between. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, actually.
So they're insane. Okay. So Dwayne Casey, this was like a running joke that people just thought like, oh
Yeah.
my God, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. Okay, like, and they're there again in Detroit. If you follow Detroit, right? So we have a coach that we trust. We have an organization that we trust. This is not the joke Raptors. We have a team that really, this core we can build into this. So why not just play this out? And I think that the one thing is when you cheat on your wife, it feels good for about 5 minutes, and then it feels really kind of hollow. And that's kind of what that Kawhi year felt like. It felt like he really wasn't one of us. He hadn't really grown with us. It always kind of brewing in the back of our minds. Is he going to leave? Is he not going to leave? These kind of like non-committal answers. How do you feel about, I think you should ask someone who lives in Canada, bro. Like, it was pretty clear to me that he wasn't coming back, right?
Yeah.
I remember when he was here for the All-Star break and how much he absolutely hated, how cold it was, because I think it was like -30 that weekend or something.
Yeah,
it
was.
And I just knew it. I'm like, someone who likes the warm weather this much cannot commit long-term to Canada. And it didn't happen. And yeah, we got a championship out of it. But had we won that championship the year before with DeMar DeRozan, that would have felt so
that would have
different.
felt better.
So not all championships are created equal. And especially from the narrative bias, the narrative perspective of it. Who do people really credit for that championship? Do they credit Kyle Lowry that much? Not really. Do they credit Masai Ujiri? Yeah, a little bit, but mainly for making the trade that got them the championship. They think about Kawhi came, gave them a championship, and left, right? That championship did more to define Kawhi's legacy than it did to define our legacy as a city. And I think this fan base and this franchise is patient enough to wait. And if we think that we have that with Scottie Barnes, why not? So let's play this out. Two timelines. Timeline number one, we do get Kevin Durant for one of the packages that you've outlined. And since you and I have both agreed on one of those packages, let's use that package as an example. Yeah. Let's say we give up Fred and we give up OG and we give up all these picks, right?
Okay.
So we don't have these picks. Take me through 2022 through 2027, which is Kevin Durant's last year. Yeah.
I'll just ask one question. So you don't think that OG and Trent is enough?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right.
Because they have asked for an all-star back. And, they may, and also I think Gary Trent's contract situation makes him a less valuable piece going back. I'm not saying he's less valuable than Cam Johnson. He's probably more valuable than Cam Johnson, but I think every other team knows if you adopt this guy, he's coming up for unrestricted free agency very soon, and he could leave.
Yeah.
You have no control. This is not like
with
trading Scottie Barnes where you have like 6 years of control. You have no control. He could leave for nothing, and he's a clutch client. So when you talk about trading,
that's exactly what I was thinking.
OG plus Gary, that's trading 2 clutch clients. And people may not want to admit this, but teams aren't jumping over themselves to trade for clutch clients. So let's say we play this out and we get Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby are now gone. Your roster, pretty much, and our beloved Kem Birch, Papa Kem, is gone. And, Malachi Flynn, tears, I don't know, but something, emotional response to Malachi Flynn getting a fresh start in Brooklyn, finally emerging as the Steph Curry that we all hoped he would be. Okay, so now where are we as a team? You don't have a starting point guard, unless you think Scottie's going to be a starting point guard.
Scottie.
Okay, you have Gary Trent Jr. Okay. So you have Scottie Barnes, your starting point guard in this situation. You have Gary Trent Jr. as your starting shooting guard. You have who's your starting small forward?
So, to be honest, I would probably trade. I would still, if Trent is still here, I would still trade. We're not done.
You just hate shooting, eh? You're done with shooting.
I would trade him for a shooter.
Are you going to trade him for Rudy Gobert? You have no more picks.
I would trade him for Brogdon. Or, Bogdan Bogdanovic.
Man, if Bogdan
You know I love
Bogdanovic
him.
had a fan club, you would be the captain of that fan club. If this trade ever goes down for you, I'm pouring out a bottle of liquor just for you. This is crazy. Okay, so Bogdanovic coming to Toronto for Gary Trent Jr., which you think that Atlanta would do that. I don't see why they would do that, but you don't really have picks now.
I think that
right?
they're desperate, but and he's
Desperate
younger.
for what?
For a change. I think that they're trying to pick. Well, that's true. I know that they just got DeJounte Murray, but he would fit. He would fit on that team.
Okay, let's say that. Okay, fine. Let's say so now we have a starting lineup of Scottie Barnes, Bogdanovic. Who's your starting small forward?
It doesn't even matter, but I would put because I would experiment. I know that Nick Nurse will experiment.
I need an answer. I need an answer. Who's your starting small forward? Otto Porter?
Pascal.
Pascal's your starting small forward. Okay, wow. Okay, and your starting power forward is Kevin Durant?
Yes.
And your starting center?
Yeah, I'm not putting Durant on the bench.
and your starting center is Precious?
Precious, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So in that lineup, you have Kevin Durant and one shooter, and one aspiring shooter, one reluctant shooter, and one non-shooter. Okay, so
I would have, and I'm assuming that both. I'm predicting right now that Scottie next year will shoot around 34%, which I think is fair, as a mark. And I think
below league average. You understand that?
It's still, yeah.
And teams, by the way, will leave you alone unless you're 37%.
Yes. And I think that Pascal will be he will hover around 37% depending on the month.
So you're batting on ultimate upside on both shooters. Okay. And you know what? It's possible because Kevin Durant, awesome passer, and but I think
Bogdanovic is a really good passer as well. Okay, but he is, honestly.
Hey, you have 4 awesome passers in your starting lineup, which you've never had before, right? That's awesome.
Yes.
And you have Precious Achiuwa, who's never met a shot he didn't like. And that's great too. And everyone's huge except for Bogdanovic, who you've added for some reason. Okay, so this is a big team, right? Do you think that team, and I'm assuming your bench is Otto Porter Jr. and Chris Boucher. You have no pure point guards, right? Because you dealt both of them away in your thing. So I'm assuming you're going to sign one on a veteran minimum or something like that, or maybe you bring Nando DeColo finally back from the dead.
He's finally
comes back. All the years of extending him offers. He finally comes back. Okay, so we imagine some hypothetical veteran starting point guard. I'm sure Goran Dragic coming back.
Yeah,
too bad he signed.
He's
someone there, and we have Thad Young, Chris Boucher, Otto Porter Jr. Okay, so this is your team. This is your core 9 going forward, and you hope that Justin Champagnie or Christian Koloko or someone is able to play some minutes for you at some point. Okay,
for sure.
This team, as currently structured, who are they better than in the East next year?
I think that they can defensively lock up basically any team, first of all. So that's we are already from, I believe, I want to say January onwards, we were around a top 5 defense, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it was close. It was close to top 5. You hovered around top 7, top 8. Yeah.
So this would be, and the way I look at it is you need to have at least a top 5 in either defense or offense, and you need to have the other one top 10.
Okay.
I think that Nurse is creative enough to get the shots that we need. I think that in terms of the way that the offense would move in that situation, it would be, we have all smart playmakers, and that's what I like. I don't think that you can have enough playmaking on a roster. And if you do that, you can get better shots. You can get better shot quality. It would be close, but I think we could beat Boston.
You think we could beat Boston with this?
With that,
now,
yes.
To the viewers out there who don't understand what Kenyon just said, okay, I'm just gonna read out Boston's starting lineup. Okay.
Yep.
Marcus Smart.
I know you think I'm crazy.
Jason Tatum, Robert Williams, Al Horford. Off the bench, Danilo Gallinari, Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We can beat that team. Okay. So you think we can beat healthy Milwaukee? Giannis.
Milwaukee will be a challenge, but so this is what I'm banking on with both of those teams. With Milwaukee, I'm banking on the fact that the seeding's not going to be in their favor this year because I think that they know what they want to focus on. They want to focus on health. They've basically been in the playoffs similar to us for a very long time, except minus the bubble year for us. And what happens is a lot of teams tend to break down over time. And so it in a way, it was a blessing in disguise that Tampa happened because you kind of want a longer offseason. You want guys to get rested. You get the point.
Yeah.
So I'm not as worried about them. I'm not really worried about Miami in the regular season because, again, Miami's kind of busted up. In terms of Boston's the only team that really scares me, but I'm not really sure where we're going to be at with Malcolm Brogdon because he has been perennially injured.
Right.
So, and Derek White was decent until he was not. And I don't see huge improvements from him. I think he's a great, valuable player, but I don't see him magically, becoming like some crazy, whatever. So they're hungry, and I think that they have the momentum. They're going to definitely be there in the Eastern Conference Finals next year. You can book it right now. I just said it. But I could easily see the Raptors on the other side of that bracket. Yeah.
Okay. So I think in this case, in your scenario, you're banking on Kevin Durant, who played 55 games last year, probably not getting injured, right?
We're going to load manage him, for sure.
You're going to load manage him. Okay.
During the season. Yeah.
So he's going to be, given the Kawhi trade, he's going to play 62 games, roughly, right?
Yep.
And you're going to bank on Scottie Barnes, and, maybe not something that people talk about enough, but a guy who's, by the way, had a bit of a history of ankle injuries already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, we've seen it through high school, college, So he's had that. And we have Siakam, who's had some serious injuries over the last 2-3 years, right? Had shoulder surgery. We have Otto Porter Jr., who's literally been injured for 4 years almost, right? That young, he's 34 years old. Okay?
Yep.
Are you starting to see how this could fall apart really quick?
See, and that's the thing. This is where I disagree, right? I look at Horford's a good example. So Horford basically rested a year, more or less, right? And that saved a lot of miles on his body. And we had the same thing happen essentially with that because he didn't really play in San Antonio. And then he was kind of rusty when he got back, and he started finally hitting his gear when we were in the playoffs. Like, he's still 34. I agree.
It's like, it's really different because, like, with Horford, right? Like with Horford, with that, whatever, like there's a limit to how much they can play. And honestly, Horford was, okay, I know this is sort of disingenuous to say this, but Horford was an all-star.
Yeah.
Like,
Times, no, I hear you. I hear you.
There's some top shelf talent there that I don't necessarily think Thaddeus Young had. Now, I know that I've seen some really freaky, funny stats which show all-time 13 points, 4.4 assists, 4.4 rebounds. LeBron James, Magic Johnson, Thaddeus Young. It's a funny thing what you can do with stats sometimes. But I watched him play last year, and I don't think that it would surprise me one bit if this is like the end of Thad Young. I don't know. Like, he's played so many minutes throughout his throughout his career.
Too.
And he plays defense. He plays both sides of the ball. He's played huge minutes. I mean, I'm not saying that he's going to fall off a cliff, but I'm not expecting him to get better necessarily. Like, he could at 34. It's not the end, right? But it is typically considered out of prime. And, in his prime, some people could argue he was the best player in Chicago that year, right? A lot of people
said he was.
And that was a year ago.
So we're also not depending. We're not going to be depending on him like how Boston depends on Horford. So that's the first thing, right? And I hear what you're saying, but then the other thing too is I actually would argue that the shoulder surgery, he didn't have to do that. That was the right decision, and that is going to that is the smart. I wish that Fred actually got surgery. I mean, maybe he wouldn't be an option in a trade now, but I wish that he would get surgery on his knee, and I know why people choose not to. We don't have to, turn this into that type of a show, and pull up the diagrams and stuff. But I really do think that was a very smart decision. It's a very tough decision career wise, but it was long term the right decision for Pascal Siakam, and it will pay in spades, because a lot of times when you don't make that decision, that's when you get aches and pains. That's when you're trying to manage it. That's when you start getting on painkillers more and more. And I really truly believe that that's going to make a big difference from that standpoint. Beyond that, Siakam has largely been pretty healthy, not DeMar healthy, because DeMar was like the Iron Man for the longest time. Holy smokes. But beyond that, I would say that it's enough. I mean, if you put it the other way, it's like you're banking on, and that I don't believe that OG is injury prone, right? Like, I think he's had bumps and bruises. I would monitor this year, but he has had bumps and bruises.
More injury prone than him personally.
Yeah, I mean,
because it's a recurring thing with Fred.
I don't, but I think that in the future it will be for Fred. Yeah, I mean, so I agree with you.
Like, age factors in, right? Yep. If a guy has already shown by the age of 28 that he's been injured consistently for 3 years, for instance, consider the Zion situation or the Joel Embiid situation early in Philly, right? Yeah. If a guy has a lot of injuries from 20 to 23, right? I don't think that that's nearly as scary for me, by the way, as a non-medical person, as someone who has a lot of injuries from 25 to 28. I think I'll tell you why. Because I think, I don't think I'll tell you why, I'm definitely going to tell you why. It's because a lot of times guys have growth spurts, and this can be a very awkward time for injuries. And I've experienced it, I've seen it, I've talked to doctors about this, and I think Leo and I were talking about this just yesterday, about talking to a few doctors about this. It's sometimes that time between 18, right as you've hit a growth spurt, you're putting on all this weight and stuff, sometimes it causes a freak injury like an ACL or something like that, right? So I think that sometimes we've seen a lot of examples of guys who were a little injury prone in their early years. Steph Curry is a great example, but maybe weren't as injury prone in their later years, right? So I would trust that OG has just had a bad couple of years over Fred's had a bad 5 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's I also look for recurring injuries in the same area, general muscle groups and general ligaments, and just to see the progressive wear and tear of an injury over time. And so that's why I mentioned Scottie's ankle, because that's been a couple times now. So it's when I start seeing ankle, knee, ankle, it's the left side. I'm like, that's weak, that has to be fixed.
Let's ignore the playoff ankle specifically for that.
Yeah, but anyone wants to see Joel Embiid is a danger to society video. It's on this channel. It's got 10,000, 11,000 views at this point.
So I hear what you're saying. I still, I'll put it this way: you could argue it either way, right? And I'm not so attacked. He's one of my favorite players, right? Obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be arguing this, But at the same time, if that is the peak, and that's what's going to get you Durant, and you can keep Scottie, I like Scottie more. Okay, sorry, Pascal, sorry, but
So let's just play this out you're thinking that we're competitive with Boston and Milwaukee and Atlanta in the East next year with this team, provided they're healthy. We're always assuming.
Yeah, I don't think that they win the first year.
Okay, so you're thinking they have a really good chance to win in the second year. And of course, in the West, we're talking about the Twin Towers in an unfortunate name now, the Twin Towers in Minnesota with an ascending superstar in Anthony Edwards. We're talking about the Thin Towers
I was just gonna say, I was like, you're forgetting the Thin Towers
in Oklahoma City, and all that blossoming, and potentially, God help us, what they may do if they ever draft Victor Wembanyama next year and put Victor and Chet and Poku on the floor at the same time, and somehow pack what is probably 27 feet of wingspan in 600 pounds. So there's a lot of teams out there that are pretty big threats. Okay, Denver could be healthy, like the LA Clippers, right? That, of course, the Golden State Warriors, right? That just won the championship. There are like 7 or 8, usually about 6 contenders each year. And from what I'm hearing from you, you believe that in the first, second year, the Raptors will be one of those teams.
I think that they would be top 4 in the NBA. Yes,
Top 4 in the NBA.
In terms of like, if I'm projecting out to the conference finals and who would potentially make it, yes, I would put.
And I mean, I think there's some precedent to what you're saying, because I mean, what do you really have here? Like, let's kind of count it out, right? You have in Kevin Durant, hopefully, if he doesn't fall off a cliff, you have a top 5, top 7 player, top 4, top 3 player in the playoffs every year for those first 2 years, at least on the front end of that contract. You have Pascal Siakam, who, if he develops into what you think he will, a 37% 3-point shooter, which, by the way, there's precedent for that too. He's done that before. 37% is possible because he had done that when he played next to Kyle Lowry, right?
I mean, look, I'm not asking for
42%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you might.
No.
But, okay.
That's for Bogdanovich, right?
Bogdanovich, 42%, 47%. He's going to hit Danny Green levels. Okay, so we got that, and in Scottie Barnes, you have a guy that I think I can comfortably say next year he should be a top 30 player in the NBA. If things go right, he should be a top 35 player in the NBA, and by year 2, which is really when you think we'll be ready to go and really go for that big swing, he should probably be comfortably a top 25 player in the NBA. Again, I'm talking about what I've seen from superstar talents in their second and third year. The jumps that they usually take are pretty much quick. Like people assume like he's going to be like 15, then 18, then 22, then 25, because I think that they're delusionally looped in with DeMar's trajectory. But Scottie Barnes is not DeMar DeRozan. Like there's a very different talent upside here, and I think that it shows to anyone who knows basketball. So you have 3 stars. You have a big 3, right?
Yes.
And you believe that
literally and figuratively.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for not letting that slide. And you don't have picks. You have pick swaps. And, so that means in 2024, you're probably going to be picking the teams because you're going to have a pick swap there.
Yep.
In 2026, you're going to be picking the teams. And unlike the Clippers and a lot of other teams that have given up a plethora of draft picks, the Raptors are actually really good at operating this way. We didn't have a first-round pick this year. How many first-round picks? Here's a trivia question for you. How many first-round picks have the Raptors had in the last 5 years?
Not many, because I know Malachi is the only one that I can think of.
Scottie Barnes.
Right.
Scottie and Malachi.
How could I forget?
Those are your 2 draft picks. Those are 2 first-rounders. Prior to that, who was it?
Oh, man. OG?
Nope. OG was the year before Pascal. Wait, no, sorry. Pascal was the year before OG. So Pascal, 2016.
Yes, it was OG.
OG, 2017. 2018, no draft pick. 2019, no draft pick. 2020, Malachi Flynn. 2021, Scottie Barnes. 2022, no draft pick. So what do we have here? And by the way, we traded a whole bunch of seconds away as well.
Yes.
So we have a situation where if you could go back in 2017, when you drafted OG, hypothetically, a superstar becomes available at that moment, you offer them 2018 unprotected, 2019 unprotected, 2022 unprotected, you'd be exactly where you are right now. And you would have given up the 3 biggest assets in the world, right? 3 unprotected picks, right? When you're a good organization that is really good at, hunting in the late parts of the draft, you can always trade back in, man. Like people who are worried about giving up picks for Durant and they would rather give up someone like OG or give up someone like Pascal or even Scottie, God forbid, you're insane. You don't understand that the value of Scottie Barnes right now, I mean, honestly, fair value, if you really price, forget Scottie Barnes because he's obviously devalued by the league. If you put Evan Mobley on the market right now, okay, he was a third overall pick, they're not doing unless we're not spreading that shit. If you put Evan Mobley on the market right now, how many draft picks do you think you would get from OKC?
A lot.
You would get all of them. You would literally get 20 first-round picks for Evan Mobley
You get
right
so
now.
many that they'd be like, we don't want your change anymore, because they literally have so many that it's change.
You know that they keep doing the ESPN trade counter, the trade machine on ESPN. If they did that trade machine, the trade would go off the page for how many first-round picks
You'd
Evan
have to
Mobley
scroll
worth
it up.
right now. That's a fucking rookie that didn't even win Rookie of the Year last year. That's what your that's what your future firsts are worth, man. The Knicks just traded 11, which is a bird in the hand moment for 3 future firsts that apparently
They shouldn't have done that, by the way.
I mean, I don't personally care.
We won't go off on it.
I think the Knicks have done fine this offseason. Any Knicks fans out there, I believe in your team right now. I believe in our old team. But this is the point that I'm making. These picks don't fucking matter if you're a good organization. Now, obviously, there's a bit of a risk involved here of giving up or surrendering, a top 5 pick. When the hell have the Raptors picked top 5, other than the Scottie Barnes season, right? Which they tanked for. They tanked. When's the last time the Raptors were so bad in the last 9 years where they picked top 5 by accident? Like they fell into the top 5. When have they picked in the lottery? Do you know what I mean?
Only through trade. It wasn't even us. It was Bargnani.
Right. It was Jakob Poeltl. 2014, no lottery picks. No picks. We had no picks in 2014. That's why you couldn't pick Giannis. Was it 2013? 2013, no picks. 2014, Bruno. So basically no picks. 2015, was it 2015? No picks again.
I have to go back, but we
have given away so many fucking first-round picks, but because we give them away one at a time, it never makes the news. And the only people who make the news are the Brooklyn Nets, twice, and teams like this, the Clippers and the Lakers, who give up all these picks. But the truth is, we've done the same thing. We just never acquired a superstar for it.
We're also just better at building our team without them. So exactly. Because if you think about it, the biggest value adds on our team right now are a 4th overall pick that we tanked for, obviously, an undrafted free agent that we signed and could have signed without a pick at all. A guy that we traded for a guy that we selected 45th in Norman Powell for Gary Trent Jr. is just a smart trade by us. A guy we picked 23rd in OG Anunoby, and a guy we picked 27th, Pascal Siakam. This is how we built our team. And a guy we got, by the way, an ex-20th pick, which is Precious Achiuwa, that we got as an add-on for a sign-in trade. We're obviously very good at operating without first-round picks, okay? That's just the truth. Okay, so that, I think, and by the way, I think that other teams know this as well. So I think this devalues your picks to some extent, right? They know this is a team that's not going to be in the lottery. If Kevin Durant tears his other Achilles, God forbid, next season, you probably still don't end up in the lottery because this team still finds a way to be competitive. So it's just one of those things where, okay, I buy that. Now, let's play out the other timeline, which is stay the course, right? Stay the course timeline is Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr. on an expiring pretty much, and you're going to have to resign him. You know why I'm laughing, because I'm like, well, you still get Bogdanovic. But go on.
Okay, we're just going to take Gary out. We're just going to put Bogdanovic in. We're going to play this alternate reality in which Bogdanovic is on the Raptors for you. And people are going to think that I did this because of my last name being Misovic, but I want this to be clear. Kenyon is the Bogdanovic fan here. I don't personally give a shit about him. Okay? So we have Fred, Bogdanovic, OG, you have Scottie, you have Pascal. You have Precious, Boucher, Otto Porter, Thad Young, the weirdest bench in the history of the world, and Christian Coloco. Apparently Precious is playing point guard in this lineup. You have 5 bigs, basically. I want to be clear to anyone who hasn't watched Otto Porter play in the last 4 years. He's basically a small ball 5 at this point, okay?
Yeah.
Thaddeus Young is basically a small ball 5. If Nicholas Batum is a small ball 5, then Thaddeus Young, as best optimally used, is a big. Chris Boucher is a big. Christian Coloco is an exclusively only a big, right? These are not these guys aren't OG. And I think people throw around this 5, guarding 1 through 5 shit too much. I've seen some of these guys who supposedly can guard 1 through 5, blown by even a reasonably quick guard, much less the guy like De'Aaron Fox or Tyrese Maxey. So I think a little bit of this, like the ability to play some of these guys is only made by real stoppers on the perimeter, like Fred and OG. Point of attack defenders who can actually keep their man in front of them make some of these lineups possible, because then it makes your help a little bit more controlled. So you have this lineup of just all bigs on the bench, which hopefully you trade one of these guys down the line for something that resembles a guard who can dribble. Okay. What's this? What's this team's trajectory look like over the next 4 years? Are they? So let's play out the same questions. Is this team competitive in the East next year? Are they a top 4 seed in the East?
Yes.
They're
I say top 4/5. That's where I have them pegged.
You realize they were a top 4/5 seed this year.
Yeah.
And you think that with all the internal growth, the addition of Otto Porter Jr.,
I'm not.
Well, this is what I'm asking, because unless you're projecting everyone in the East to get way better, I would like to understand the logic.
So you want me to tell you the seeding then, like where I think that they would?
Because I want to know.
So if you want me to commit.
My goal in this exercise for those who are listening is to understand: are we on track for a championship over the next 3 years anyway? Without
Kenyon crazy. No, I think again, we are where Boston was 2 years ago.
You think so?
I do. I really do. I absolutely do. So I think that we could push as high as 3rd seed. Again, it really depends on injuries and all these other things. I more care about the playoffs. That's how I see it.
Okay.
And I think if the matchups go the right way, I think that, because we have a rebuilt bench, you assume that there will be a trade at some point. But, right. I really do believe that you can, as crazy as this sounds, you could probably roll into the playoffs largely with this lineup. You add someone else. I mean, basically. I would say that if you look at the 90th percentile outcome for this current squad, I would say second round out is too low as a 90th percentile outcome.
Okay.
I would say Eastern Conference Finals.
Conference Finals. Okay.
But then we would get whooped.
So in order to get, unless you have the luckiest bracket in the history of the world, these are the teams that you will have to beat. You'll have to beat one of these teams to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I guarantee
Philly or Bucks, I'm guessing.
Philadelphia 76ers with PJ Tucker, Joel Embiid, hopefully a healthy James Harden, potentially a star version of Tyrese Maxey, because that guy is just getting better and better, right?
Yeah.
Tyrese, hopefully, Matisse Thybulle has learned how to shoot at some point. Maybe he can get up to 27% 3-point shooting. He can, So we have that team. We have the 2-point attack of a very deep, very long, and extremely good, in my opinion, Atlanta Hawks team with DeJounte Murray and Trey Young, which I think could be extremely underrated, by the way. The depth that they've added, I think AJ Griffin is awesome. I think, let me just point one thing out. I hate the fact that a lot of people who talk about one team don't watch other teams. It's a pet peeve of mine. They just overrate everything that their team is doing. They underrate everything the other team is doing. I don't like that. Okay. The New York Knicks have.
I will make that.
The New York Knicks have some.
Rashawn Holmes for Siakam.
Perfect example. So, I think the New York Knicks have some potential as not being a dumpster fire this year, right? Depending on what the Brooklyn Nets get back for Kevin Durant, and if they get back a competitive package, they could be better, weirdly enough, than a 7th seed. It's a very unlikely outcome, but they could be at least as good, if not better, if Ben Simmons plays and he's healthy. Again, if the package they get back is from Phoenix and it's Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton or something like that, that could be a really good team. That's a really talented team. Okay? And that's all young guys. Simmons is 25, Mikal Bridges is 26, Ayton's 23. Those guys all have upside. They can all get better. And by the way, 2 of those guys are former first overall picks. Okay.
Yeah.
Did I even talk about Milwaukee and Boston yet? Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see how quickly I'm going up this ladder of this quickly ascending East? The other problem is Victor Wembanyama. That's a really big problem. And I'll tell you why. Because you're going to have fire sales, right, around the deadline.
I see what you're saying.
Teams looking to give up guys like Miles Turner, teams looking to bottom out completely, give up Jakob Poeltl. How much of a difference would Jakob Poeltl make for that Atlanta Hawks team, potentially? Or potentially the Boston Celtics as the backup third big on that team, right? They could probably get it. They still have some picks. They can do this, right? When these teams start having these fire sales, these top-heavy teams become even more top-heavy. The only team that really can't do anything is a capped-out, hard-capped, picked-out Toronto Raptors team with Kevin Durant. They don't have the option. They can flip some stuff, but obviously any team looking to get worse is looking for prospects and picks, which you won't have unless you want to give Precious Achiuwa away for a win-now move, right? So you compromise the move, right? So the teams at the top that might think like, hey, like someone like Philly, I don't know what Philly's pick situation is, but that's a team that could mortgage a little bit of their future to bolster their present because they have an aging superstar in James Harden. So in this case, as much as I'm very bullish on how good the Raptors are, because I think they've gotten better with Otto Porter Jr., and I think they'll get better with Scottie Barnes being better, there's also a very legitimate case that almost 7 teams in the East have a very good case to say that they're going to be drastically better next year.
Yeah, so I'm lower on 2 teams than you.
Which one?
First, I'll start with the Knicks. I do like Hartenstein, but I am not as high on Julius Randle. And I think that they're going to struggle with the spacing because I don't think that Brunson is a good enough shooter, and I don't think that his offense skews towards the 3-point shot as much as it maybe needs to make that situation work. So I think that they're going to struggle a little bit more than people. I mean, it doesn't matter if they win 2 games. Knicks fans are going to go crazy, but I love Knicks fans for that. But
we're adorable.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't see it. I don't. They're going to be in the play-in for sure.
Let's forget the Knicks. Let's forget the Knicks. Obviously, they were
and Atlanta. Yeah, so Atlanta in the playoffs, I think that's where they're going to have their problems. Because they're going to go up against one of these longer, bigger teams, even if it's not the Raptors, okay? And they are going to have trouble.
John Collins still, that piece might be moved for something, right?
Yep.
They still have Clint Capella.
Yep.
They have Onyeka Okongwu, who, in my opinion,
I love him.
Way better prospect than Precious Achiuwa. Everything you think Precious Achiuwa is, I think he's better. Okay? So you have pieces there. They haven't given away everything. They give away some picks, right? But they didn't give away everything. They still have these 2 very big pieces, right? And they have some depth. And, they kept all their core pieces in that DeJounte Murray trade. They just basically inherited a really freaking good – they were just inherited an all-star. It's what we're trying to do, except they didn't give away anything. They gave away Danilo Gallinari, man.
But you're looking at –
on Boston next year.
Yeah, but the thing you're looking at with Atlanta is you're looking at a team that has 2 guys that are your main initiators on offense who are not as big as the other guys that you just named. So that's...
Yeah, but he's 6'5", and he's super long.
I thought he was 6'3". Is he 6?
I believe he's 6'5".
Okay, so if that's the case, then I my bad, because I thought he was 6'3", and my whole thing was I was like, if Trey is Trey, and you have another guy who's 6'3", then defensively DeJounte Murray, he can guard up, and I'm not worried about him in that sense for them. But it was more as an offensive initiator. So if he's 6'5", then I take back what I said. Right, that was my concern, is that you have 2 short or guys in the backcourt. So again, my bad. So for
I want to confirm this because I've always see, like, here's the funny thing. DeJounte Murray, for whatever reason, is always available for trade in NBA 2K, and I
yeah,
always trade Fred VanVleet for him every time.
I would have
He's
done it.
6 foot. Okay, so he's 6'4". We're both wrong. He's
Okay,
6'4". Okay, so in fairness, I
yeah,
want to say this for the record. There are a lot of guys in the NBA who are 6'4", who are listed 6'6", even now.
right,
Okay, a
yeah,
lot of guys. Norman Powell, by the way, super long. He was closer to 6'2". I
yeah,
met him. He's
yeah,
like basically right here. Okay, so you can play with a 6'4" guy who has super long arms in the
yeah,
backcourt. I totally believe that. You're not asking him to play small forward. I think you can do it. Trae
yeah,
Young, on the other hand, is a complete pylon and a bottom 1% defender in the NBA. And I think you got better next to him. You got rid of freaking,
yeah,
Kevin Herter, who's not a great defender, and you got an all-league defender in DeJounte Murray. I think you got
yeah,
better.
yeah. So we'll
And
see.
this is
We'll
a
see
team, by
what.
the way, that got into the conference finals 2 years
Yeah.
ago, right?
Even then, and I'll be honest, like I thought that they punched a little bit above their weight,
Sure.
but yeah, you know what? Like
I think
you
the
could be,
Boston Celtics punched above their weight this year. I mean, like, it happens, right?
yeah,
Luck happens. But, like, it's like there are certain teams that, like the Knicks, right? Like, not to keep bringing it back to them, but they're on my mind for some reason right now. And, you have a guy like Julius Randle, who in a contract year punches a little bit above his weight, right? He shoots a little bit better. And then he
yeah,
gets worse, right? But how do we know that Julius Randle didn't just have a bad year like Pascal Siakam had a bad year? Right? Like,
yeah,
we have to give people sort of the benefit of the doubt, unless they're like there's a clear issue that's what's wrong with that person. He could have a bounce back year next year. We don't know that, right? Jalen Brunson is 25 years old. He could get better. If we're projecting all of our 25-year-olds to go from 30% to 36% or whatever,
yeah,
right? We can't assume static growth for everybody else. By all accounts,
yeah.
Jalen Brunson is a hooper, right? This
Oh,
guy
he
who
is.
loves
He
basketball.
is. He
And
is.
if you listen to his biggest fans,
Yeah,
not his biggest critics, but his biggest fans, they would tell you that playing next to Luka kind of inhibited him a little bit. It
yeah,
kind of stopped him from, and this is his team and it's a big opportunity. And he won't be the first hyped guard to fail in the Garden,
yeah,
right? It's happened before. But what if this is the one guy who actually makes it work, right? What if this is the guard who finally, makes it happen, right? It
we'll
could
see.
happen. So, anyways, so we move on from
Yeah,
the Knicks, and we just have like a loaded East, is what I'm saying. And
yep,
there's a very good chance, in my opinion, that we could finish 7th next year, and there's also a chance we could finish 2nd. I think it's a range, and I think
yep,
we have to see more. But I
yep,
don't think that it's a foregone conclusion necessarily that we're going to finish 4th or 5th, or that someone. So my point is that at some point in the playoffs, you're going to have to beat a possibly healthy Philly team, or
yep,
a healthy Milwaukee team, or
yep.
a stacked Hawks team, which may or may not still feature John Collins, or a really deep now Boston Celtics team, which, by the way, I forgot to mention Grant Williams off the
Right. Yeah,
bench. It's 9 deep, really 10 deep, really good players,
yeah.
right?
We're not winning
And
this
we're
year by
exactly
standing pat.
okay. That's exactly what I wanted to say. So
Yeah,
you don't win this year. The next year, now, Gary Trent is up for a contract extension, right? He either wants to leave or he wants to be paid $27 million, $28 million. Cap's gone up, right?
yeah,
New CBA on the rise, right? He may take a proven deal, another one, or he might outright walk. But
yeah,
in our scenario, he's not even on our team anymore, so he's not our problem.
yeah,
We have OG Anunoby, who's
yeah,
coming up for a 1-year extension. Pascal Siakam has been extended. Fred VanVleet is on a huge contract now, making $27-28 million a year. We still have our draft picks. Now we're banking on internal growth and hoping that Scottie ascends to superstar status before Fred and Pascal and that OG can get a little bit better before Fred and Pascal show any real decline, right?
yep.
So I think in your scenario with this team, effectively the window for title contention is 2024 to 2026.
Standing
Right?
pat, you're saying.
Standing pat relatively. And of course, one thing that we haven't mentioned is if you don't give up all of these picks and all of these assets, for Kevin Durant. You have them the next time a star becomes available, and you're a little bit further along in the trajectory, because we don't know, by the way, that Kawhi Leonard won't want out this year at some point, and he's healthy and he's really good. How is that any bigger a risk to take than Kevin Durant? And he wants to come back. We don't know that, for instance, Giannis becomes unhappy because Milwaukee gave away all of their picks and he really just wants to come to Toronto. We don't know that. So even if a lesser star becomes available, like say, I don't know, an RJ Barrett, I don't know who becomes available.
Yeah.
Right? Some sort of, secondary star becomes available and he's available for, I don't know, OG plus 2 picks, and it's a massive upgrade, right? Then you can make that move if you haven't given away your picks. And when you're closer to title contention, or you can keep doing what the Raptors have been doing, which is packaging a player with the pick that year to get a slight upgrade, like they did with Marc Gasol, right?
Yeah.
So in this situation, do you think between your two scenarios, do you have a better chance to win with Durant or without Durant?
Well, I mean, of course, you have a better chance to win with Durant.
Okay, but the thing is that everything I said about the East remains true with Durant and without Durant, which means even with Durant, you're going up against all of these teams that I just mentioned. And you might think that, hey, you have the best player in the conference, but you don't, actually. You have the third best player in the conference and potentially the fourth best player in the conference. And the three teams ahead of you have those better players.
Okay.
Giannis, Joel Embiid, debatable, but I'll say that Joel Embiid, like next year, if he's healthy, Kevin Durant in year however many this is going at 34, it's a wash if nothing else. The difference is Joel Embiid has James Harden still, right, next to him. And you have Jason Tatum, who is very quickly ascending to superstar status. He was a first-team All-NBA guy this year. He became a much better passer, much better ball handler. And off-season more, this guy is a true hooper. He's entering age 25. We've seen this trajectory over and over. Guys hit prime. Guys like this, they hit one prime, which is like an athletic prime around 22, 23, and they do all this fun stuff. And then they hit another prime around 26, 27, where their mind unlocks, and they can do now all this other stuff that they couldn't do before, and they're way more mature, like LeBron. And then you're dealing with a monster. And unfortunately for the Raptors, they play in the same freaking conference as three of those guys, who are all younger than your superstar. And of course, the Raptors have Pascal Siakam, but
they also have Scottie Barnes.
And Scottie Barnes ascending. And so you have this sort of upside of these three guys, and it could be a monster, but it also could run into the best player in the East. Twice. Right? So in this situation, I guess what I'm saying is, would you rather contend from 24 to 26, 24 to 28, have all that flexibility, bank on Scottie Barnes getting better, or play this two peak situation? They're both 2 peak situations.
I was just about to say that the first second we got Scottie, I immediately said to you, we have 2 windows. We have one window when he's on his rookie scale, and then that we can and probably should maximize if at all possible, which is kind of hinting towards, a potential, answer to a question that you may or may not have. And then we have a future, chance as well. When he's obviously, between age 24 to 28. And I'll just say, just for the purpose of being a little bit, argumentative here, is that I would say that the studies do seem to show that, your brain stops truly developing in terms of its creation of neural pathways at 28. So I'll just push it one more year to age 28. But that's like, nitpicky. But yeah, so yeah, I believe under the we're standing pat, we're vibing, whatever you want to call it, I believe in the ascendance of Scottie Barnes that much. But if you're asking me, would I rather have KD? I think that there's a lot that he can learn from KD on the roster.
That's interesting because, one thing we haven't talked about at all and probably worth mentioning is KD could come with some downside as well. there's some injury history there, obviously,
Yep.
but there's also some, locker room stuff that may or may not be a problem. I mean,
Yep.
this is a guy who has demanded a trade from an organization, and that's not something you can say about any player who's currently on the Raptors.
Yep.
No player on the Raptors has ever demanded a trade from any organization that I know of, right? I think Kem Birch demanded to be released from the Orlando Magic so that he could sign with somebody, but other than that, I don't think like there's Chris Boucher's never demanded a trade. Scottie Barnes, OG Anunoby, none of these guys. These guys have been here. So you are taking a bit of a risk bringing a guy in. And the thing that you said about the first year probably not being the year we win is
Yeah.
true, because when you implement a piece this large, there's another growth curve. Everybody has to change. What
Yeah.
Pascal Siakam was doing last year, what Scottie was doing last year, suddenly they have to adjust everything for this guy. And now it's lucky because Kevin Durant is an extremely portable player.
Yep.
And he's extremely unselfish. And if there was ever a superstar ever in league history who could just seamlessly blend into a team like this, it's probably him, right? He's super smart. So in this case, you have one window with Durant, which is full of potential risks, but has huge upside, and has the upside to know that when you come down in a tight game, last second, you have probably the best guy in the league to make that shot or take that shot.
Yeah.
And then in 2027, God forbid, if he asks for a trade before that, you're probably getting a lot of those picks back and probably young prospects. And you're now in the same situation with a team jumping over themselves to get Kevin Durant for a 2-year rental instead of a 4-year, right?
Yep. Sure.
But in this situation, you have a second window where you can now say, hey, we're moving from Kevin to Scottie. Now Scottie is ready to take us to the next level. Now you have all your picks back, and you have hopefully a lot of these younger players, these undrafted second round picks, et cetera, that you've picked up. And then you can sort of rebuild around Scottie, and then you'll have him on his second contract, and hopefully he sticks around. So personally, here's one thing that I will say.
Mm-hmm.
When you were reading out your starting lineup for your Kevin Durant team,
Yep.
I was thinking to myself, that lineup is going to suck defensively. Now, I may be wrong on that.
Mm-hmm.
But Scottie Barnes, for everything he was last year, was not a great defender.
No.
Pascal Siakam, for everything he was last year, was not a great defender.
He wasn't bad.
He wasn't bad, but he wasn't great. Okay,
Yeah.
we're not talking 90th percentile, 80th percentile defenders. These two,
he was about
they were
75th, right?
Yeah, he was right around there. Kevin Durant, as much as I sing his praises for his shot blocking and his smarts, is not a great defender right now. He's not a great defender, right? And Bogdan Bogdanovic is not a great defender at all.
Yeah.
So you have 4 not so great defenders. And you have Precious Achiuwa, who, by the way, is also not a great defender. Because in this trade for Kevin Durant, you effectively traded away your 2 best defenders.
Yep.
OG Anunoby and Fred VanVleet.
Yep.
Now, Raptor fans out there who have been accusing me of never saying a positive thing about Fred VanVleet, I want you to screen grab this part of this segment and put it on your wall, because I'm a buyer. I understand what he means to this team. And there's some value to be said, okay, like, it's a team game. As a team, this long switchable team can do well. But it only can do well if you can stop somebody from consistently attacking the paint. And you say, well, if they get into the paint, they're dealing with all this length. If they throw a pass, they're dealing with all this length. But at some point, this does become a little bit, I think, incomplete without that guy like OG. And this is where I say, this is why you need to give up Pascal in this trade. Because if you don't, you give up everything else you need. Because now, flip the other situation. Imagine a team with Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby, Scottie Barnes, and Kevin Durant.
Yeah, so
I think you have a better chance to win with that team.
Potentially. The thing that I'll say, and I'll even put it on OG as well, is that all of the guys that you talked about, that in terms of, weren't really great. Let's exclude Scottie, that weren't really great this year in terms, weren't that top, let's say 80th percentile.
Right.
They took leaps forward in terms of their usage. They took leaps forward in terms of their contribution on offense. They took leaps forward in terms of their isolation scoring, or at least isolation scoring attempts. That takes away from your defense, including with your man, OG. His defense went down this year. And so I think that it's fair to say that no matter what, whoever you get, having Mr. Durant, who takes up so much of that, and you don't care. Listen, behind closed doors, if you have a guy like that, you're gonna give him the ball. There's not gonna be an argument, right? Like no one's gonna say though, Fred. Let's say Fred was somehow on that team, right? And like Fred's not gonna be like, no, I'm the best, right? Like Steve Kerr, right? Like, there's no way that that's gonna actually happen, and so. To me, that right there, it saves you a lot more energy on that end of the floor. And to be fair, Pascal had a lot of games where he really was really heavily involved on the defensive end. I mean, I look back to the double overtime with Miami, for example, and that's a perfect example where people ignored Pascal's impact on the defensive end. And I'm not saying that like he's our best defender. I think OG is obviously our best one-on-one defender by far. There's no question about that. But I'm very curious to see, because I don't think that OG is the best communicator on the floor. He communicates, though. He does communicate, for sure. But I just don't think that he is as communicative as...
Who is?
I would say Scottie right now. Scottie reminds me of Gasol that way, where he just talk. I don't really, he's a special person in so many ways, both on and off the court. But yeah, I that's the thing that I would be curious about. And whatever happens, we'll never know the other, alternative, and because we can only live out one, potentially. But that's what I would say is that. I agree with you that your one-on-one defense potentially could take a hit. But then the other thing, too, is that, maybe you look out 2 years from now, maybe Christian Koloko, Mr. Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, maybe he does actually allow you to play a different style, and you could play two different styles of defense, one where you're at least you can attempt to be a little bit more aggressive on the perimeter. Okay. He's not there yet. Right now, by the way, but he could be.
I think shot blocking transfers. I've seen a lot of really good bouncy college shot blockers come in and put up really good per minute stats as shot blockers. But defense is more than shot blocking, and I think everyone who understands basketball knows that.
At least you're not talking to me like I'm crazy, so it's not.
but let me play a thought experiment with you here for a second. You think this is a good defensive team? Right, with the team as structured, as you mentioned, because you said that defensively they would be scary. So you think this is a good defensive team, right?
I think it would be good enough. Yeah. I think on both ends of the floor you would be top 10, which is good enough. And I would argue they would be, because I believe in Nurse so much. I believe that he could make them into a top 5 defense, and they would be, let's say, top 10, top 8. Offense.
Okay, so let me play a thought experiment with you. I'm going to add players to the team. I'm just going to drop them onto the team, and you tell me if they're the best defender on your team.
Okay.
Al Horford. Would Al Horford be the best defender on that team?
I'm not going to get into semantics. I'll just say yes. Sure.
Okay. Would Marcus Smart be the best defender on that team?
I would take Marcus Smart on that team in a heartbeat.
Okay, so Marcus Smart is the best defender on this team. Would Jaylen Brown be the best defender on this team? Let's say we swap Jaylen Brown for Bogdan Bogdanovic in your random simulation. Is he guarding your best guy on the other side?
Yeah.
Okay. Would Robert Williams be the best defender on this team?
No.
You don't think so? Okay, cool. Who would be a better defender than Robert Williams?
I mean, if we're just going down the Celtics, I mean, I think
You got to say it out loud, man. Tell me who's the better
Wait,
defender
you
on this
said
team.
you said Robert Williams, not Grant Williams.
Of course.
Okay, sorry. Yes, yes, he would be.
He would be. Okay.
I'm
Would
not
Jason
going to say
Tatum be,
Christian Coloco. No, just kidding.
would Jason Tatum be the best defender on this team?
That's who I was going to actually name is Jason Tatum, but I think if
Come on,
you
just
yeah
be honest.
no, I don't.
You wouldn't. Who's a better defender than Jason Tatum on this team? On that team?
On my hypothetical team,
Pascal.
I would say Pascal if he has, because he has less of an offensive load. I'd be
Okay,
curious.
so that's fair. That's fair. Would Giannis be the best defender on this team?
Of course, that's.
Would Drew Holiday be the best defender on this team?
Maybe, because he's getting older.
Okay, so age could.
I'm at least giving you fair.
Okay. So what I'm trying to show here is that there are teams within our conference that have sometimes 2 and sometimes 5 players who will at some point put those players together on the court, and their 5th best defender would be your best defender, right? And as much as we talk about schemes, defense, being coachable, I think I've seen Nick Nurse coach a not so great defensive team before, and I can tell you, sometimes you don't have the personnel. You don't have the personnel. Everything he's done with Gary Trent Jr. has raised him up 10%. Yep. All the buy-in, all 100%. That shit. He still can't guard point of attack. At some point, it just comes down to physicality and tools, and I don't see the lateral quickness with Scottie to stay in front of point guards. There's not one player on your team, as constructed, that can stop DeJounte Murray from getting to the paint, that can chase Trae Young around those picks. You see my point. So Vision 6-9, as much as I am a buyer in Vision 6-9 and I love it and everything, I have since corrected myself and said, at some point, you're going to need a guy who's at least 6'4", 6'5", who can actually do some of the stuff that Fred VanVleet does. If you want to move off Fred VanVleet, great. But if you want to replace him in the starting lineup with Scottie Barnes, as I have been championing for last year, don't listen to me. I'm crazy. It might not work, because at some point, if a guy always is collapsing your defense, getting into the paint, it's always going to create openings. It's always going to create rim pressure. It's always going to, and you jump in, you start talking about guys like Ja Morant. Fuck Ja Morant. Fuck Jalen Green. Talk about guys like Jalen Brunson. Like a guy like Jalen Brunson, who ate, Utah for dinner with Rudy Gobert anchoring back there, and some competent defenders like Royce O'Neal. Royce O'Neal would also, by the way, be the best defender on this hypothetical team, in my opinion.
He hasn't reported yet.
So my point is that to then give up so much on that point of attack, as we saw with Philly, right? Because you couldn't keep Maxey and Harden in front of us because Fred was gimpy and Gary is Gary, right? So by now taking that and making it even worse, in my opinion, with Scottie and Bogdan, or even Scottie and Trent, right, as the point of attack defenders, you constantly collapse, constantly giving up corners. And I think no matter how much length you have, unless you're putting out 8'5" guys with 9'10" wingspans out there, at some point you're going to give up too many corner threes to win a basketball game. So this is the only thing I would say. I think if the Raptors trade for Kevin Durant, I don't want Fred VanVleet to leave, because I think that he needs to stay. If you get rid of OG, fine. I can see Scottie potentially doing 80% of what OG does defensively. Okay?
Yep.
But if you get rid of Fred VanVleet in this situation, that shooting and that point of attack defense, provided he doesn't fall off a cliff because of injuries and, he's better, that is very valuable next to a guy like Kevin Durant. So that's what I will say with that. Now, to the point of, answering the question of whether we need to do this.
Yeah.
I think we don't. I am coming now to the side of, I get why we would want to do this. I understand the upside, but I am willing to say that there's enough talent here, enough intelligence in the coaching staff and the general manager and president, that I trust that when we are further along in our development, maybe that further along is this trade deadline. I don't know that. But I really do believe that there will be a huge market of players that come up like a Marc Gasol. Not specifically Marc Gasol because he is in Spain right now, but I mean like a Marc Gasol who will come up at the trade deadline, and you might be able to potentially package Kem Birch and Thad Young and grab Miles Turner by throwing in a couple of picks. And that might actually make you a contender, because now you would have like a crazy amount of length and every possible position. You might be able to swap Gary Trent Jr. plus 3 assets plus Kem Birch for potentially a star at the deadline. You don't know if Paul George wants out, right? I think there will be a better option that will present itself if we play the long game. If we do go for Durant, if that is the move, I really don't think that we should outbid ourselves.
Yes.
Or outbid anyone who's going crazy. Because if we give up, like, this is a thing that I said to Leo on our last thing with Basketball Zone. The minute you start giving up one pick, you start taking yourself out of like 50 options that are no longer present to you. If we lose 2023 pick, you can't add that, and 27 other teams can.
Yeah.
And if the team that is trading that star wants that 2023 back, you have to now add 27 and 29 just to make up for the 23 you don't have.
You also want control over your own assets, ideally.
Yes. And I hope that the Raptors do very seriously consider trading Gary for a guard that fits a little bit better. Right? I really do. I don't think that guard is like a lateral move like Karis LeVert or something like that. I don't think it's some aging Oladipo. But I am positive that at some point one of these teams is going to make a guy available. Maybe a Jonathan Isaac becomes available for nothing because Orlando is winning too many games and they just really want to lose more. Or, maybe Shea becomes available. What if Shea Gilgeous-Alexander becomes available because OKC is just like, okay, we're willing to move off, and you can get Shea for Gary Trent plus all your picks. Gary Trent plus Kem Birch plus all your picks. I would do that in a heartbeat, and I guarantee it makes you better because Shea fits better with this roster than KD does. And I know that sounds crazy because Shea's 25, man.
Can I give a counterpoint to Shea?
Sure.
Now, I want Shea, so it's not my counterpoint, but there's someone that I've, debated with about Shea, and they don't like Shea because they think that Shea is potentially injury prone or potentially this. I don't care. I would take the chance on it, but they think that he, with his body type, could potentially have risks of injuries.
I say the same thing to that as I said to you earlier. I trust the guy more if he's injury prone before 25 than if he's injury prone after 25. I know that it's technically assessing something that you know versus something you don't know, and that's not necessarily fair, but I'm saying that in terms of red flags for me, late career injuries are more of a red flag to me. I don't necessarily think he's been that injury prone, but
I don't think so either. Either. So I just wanted to.
So I guess what I'm saying here is that the Raptors don't need to panic, right? And if there's sort of a parting word to this very long, at this point, 2-hour pod,
every time
we have to support every time, because it's just such a pleasure talking basketball with you. But if there's a parting note here, is I don't think the Raptors need to outbid anybody for this.
Yeah.
I think there will be options that, no offense to Kevin Durant, will be better than a 34-year-old Kevin Durant. I know that he is so good. And for next year and the year after, and even potentially, I would not put it past him. I told somebody earlier, if Kevin Durant wins the next 3 finals MVPs, I would not be surprised.
Yep.
At all. He's that good. I'm not scared at all about the injury concerns.
Yep.
I just think that with stars becoming available all the time, right? This isn't the first and last opportunity you're going to have. This might be the first and last opportunity you have to add that level of star.
Yeah.
But the question then becomes,
do we need to add that level of a star?
No, let's before we part, let's not ignore the elephant in the room. The obvious move here obviously is what? Scottie Barnes, right? That's the obvious move. It's
Yes.
so obvious. It's screaming. If honestly, I think,
Oh, you
you
mean
know,
to just give up, give up? Dip. I can't even say
that's,
the
you know,
words.
yes, exactly. And I would never do it. And I just literally posted a reel criticizing Will Liu and Oren for saying that they would do that. I'm not going to say that I can do that, so don't try to catch me in that. I would never.
No,
It's my
no,
favorite
no,
player.
no, 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 no,
Right.
no, no. You won't catch me saying it either.
If you were damn serious as a team to go all in on Kevin Durant, how
Yep.
the hell are you justifying keeping a 20-year-old player next to him as
Because
a
you're not
core piece?
because you're not the Kings. It's simple. Like, and I don't mean that like, and like it's true, right? Like, we started this off by talking about how this front office, this whole organization from top to bottom builds. They're patient. You said that they're willing to watch paint dry. That's why you
Right.
keep that guy, right? Because you're willing
Right.
to watch the paint dry, to look at the mural after. That's why. And I think that that's the smart move. And no matter what they do, they're gonna keep him most likely. Like I would, put at greater than 99%, right?
I've
Um,
heard is that keep him right, but
unless someone has a stroke or something in the middle of the night and hits the wrong button or something, he's not going anywhere. And I think that that's the
right.
right. And as long as that happens, I think we're in. I think we're fine. I think we're fine as long as that happens. Because at the end of the day, you have a foundational piece for now and for the future. Because I think he's that good. I think that he is that good. He's not perfect. He won't. There's no such thing as a perfect player. But I think
Right.
he's that good.
Well, I mean, I just want to point out that in this case, you did sort of loosely compare Kevin Durant to Domantas Sabonis.
Just trying to think. Wait. Oh, I see. Yeah. No. No. I see. I see what you're saying, but
Leo is going to be so happy to hear this, by the way, because you know, like this just absolutely cements Domantas Sabonis as the perennial All Star that Kings fans hope that he will be, which he will not be.
yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
it scales, right? I think that the gap
Yeah.
between, and I want to be clear on this, biggest Scottie Barnes fan on earth, the gap between Durant and Domantas Sabonis is so much larger
Oh,
than the gap between
yeah.
Scottie and Tyrese Halliburton. And as
Yeah.
an asset right now, I want to be clear, as Raptor fans, we understand Scottie. Here's the reason I don't think Scottie's going to be moved. I don't think Scottie's going to be moved because I think we value him more than anyone else. I don't think there's a team out there, and that's usually like people don't understand the logic of trades, right? Brooklyn
Yeah.
wants Scottie Barnes because they need something to present to their fan base as hope. We want Scottie Barnes because we think he's a generational talent who's going to end up as a top 25, top 30 player of all time. Those are very different ways of valuing a prospect. The reason that a deal around Scottie would never work, in my opinion, is because if we put Scottie into this trade, which I don't think we will, and I've never heard that we have, but if we did, that's the end of our trade. We're basically giving you Gary Trent and fillers the rest of the way, and we're not giving you picks, and we're not giving you
Yeah.
good picks at that, because we already feel like we've added the best piece in the trade, or the second best piece in the trade from our side. From Brooklyn, they're going to be like, yeah, we want 6 picks, and it's just going to be a standstill. So in order for a trade to work between two parties, one party needs to assess fairly the value of the other party's asset. And I think that in terms of how Sean Marks and how Masai Ujiri see guys like Precious Achiuwa, OG Anunoby, Scottie Barnes, big difference, right? I think the only asset that the Raptors have that the Nets value almost as much as we do is Pascal Siakam. And that's where I think, and maybe Gary Trent, which is why that's my package, right? The reason that was my package is basically because of that. I'm not trying to be Nostradamus again. Coloco, wished him happy draft day, 6 hours in advance. Scottie,
I wanted him so much.
Yeah, I'm really happy we got him. He might be on the move, right? He might be on the move, but my point here is that in order for a trade to work, right? Like we, as an organization, value Fred VanVleet, right? Our front office values him as a culture driver and whatever. The Nets are not looking at him like that. They're looking at him as an undersized, often injured, 20-point per game, first-time All-Star.
Yep.
Right? We, as a fan base who read analytics, probably see Fred VanVleet as a class above Jalen Brunson.
Yeah.
Most NBA fans Most NBA players, by the way, do not agree with that assessment. Most NBA players polled would probably tell you that Jalen Brunson's probably better than Fred VanVleet.
Yeah.
That's truth, right? So there's a gap, there's a disparity. And when that disparity exists, trades cannot happen, which is a big reason why I think, the Scottie Barnes thing will not happen. And so from the perception value, I don't think that Scottie Barnes' value right now is that much higher than Tyrese Halliburton's value was last year this time. I think it's a little bit higher, but it's not that much higher. It is crazy, but you have an undervalued asset. And the reason it's undervalued is because you see what's under the hood. You've worked with him every day. You've seen what he does. You've seen his habits. You've seen his impact. Other teams haven't seen that.
Even with winning the Rookie of the Year. Because one of the things that I noticed is that, and if you watch what's going on with ESPN and with these different shows, not Chris, whatever his name is, what I saw was now the narrative is shifting. Now they're saying, oh, well, they wouldn't throw in Scottie Barnes. So I kind of see it more as posturing rather than them devaluing. I see it more of them wanting more and trying to get the Raptors, pressure the Raptors to give up more, not realizing, like you said, you're dealing with a man who is comfortable watching paint dry.
Right. Well, I think the Raptors have held off on Scottie partly because they know exactly what they have in him, partly because he makes so little money. You have to toss in so much with him. It's almost impossible to make a deal work with just Scottie and Gary Trent. Even what I said, Scottie, Gary plus Chem doesn't bring you to the dollar amount, right? That's 17 plus 6 plus 8. That's not 42, right? Yeah. You have to add one more piece, which is probably going to be Thaddeus Young, which means you're gutting your team.
Complex. Right. You're not because remember I said you need to be deep enough. You need to have the right collection of players remaining to make it through the meat grinder. And I think that if you are trying to figure out a package with Scottie Barnes, there's too many guys that are outgoing, as you're outlining as well, and it just doesn't work. So yeah, like it just, for that reason, it doesn't make sense. And also just because no.
So no. Exactly. So I think that's sort of the underrated part of this trade negotiation, which everyone can just say like, oh well, okay. Let me quote Will Liu here. He said, I would. What did he say? I wouldn't be able to
lose
sleep
3
nights.
Days. Yeah, three nights.
3 nights of sleep, and then I'd be okay with it, right? And then Oren said I would trade him, but I would feel really bad about it. Well, if we trade Scottie Barnes, I'm moving to Brooklyn, bro. I'm not watching another Raptor team. Like this is like, for me, this is non-negotiable. I've said it on every freaking topic about this, every video about this. I'm not trading this guy because there's no way that the Brooklyn Nets value him fairly. Impossible. You see him. I don't even think the Raptors value him fairly. In my opinion, I don't think the Raptors value him fairly. I think there's another gear that is going to come with him that's going to shock even them.
Yeah. So, and I agree with you. I said to James Welch, shout out, that basically I wouldn't go to that extent, but I would basically become a fan of players rather than teams at that point. I would have to renounce my Raptors membership card.
He's gonna if we trade him, he's gonna come back and haunt us for the rest.
He's never gonna let it go. He didn't let the guys on the boat left him.
15 years. You're gonna look back at this for 15 years and say, what if? No matter how much you win with this guy, you're gonna know that you had a rookie here. And I'm telling you, man, no matter where he goes, even if he goes to a dumpster fire in Brooklyn, he will change that culture within 20 minutes of getting there. He's gonna get Ben Simmons talking. He's gonna be texting everyone up. There's a thing, man. Like, I think it's such an underrated part of Scottie, which is the communicative, collaborative, team building element that he just has so naturally. If you talk to anyone who's been around him, it's within 2 seconds you feel like you're his best friend. He pulls people in, right? And it's like he's hitting you up, he's pulling you. It's like there are guys like this. They're very special players. They don't grow on trees. Most guys, they don't fucking care. I covered the NBA for a bit, man. I can't tell you how many times, especially those depressing Raptor teams in 05, 06, 04, 05, how bad that locker room situation was, especially after a 2-3 game losing streak. No one was talking. Everyone's just kind of checking in, checking out. People show up 5 minutes before practice. This Raptor team right now is a totally different beast. And I don't think Scottie gets enough credit for how much he pulled guys together. And if you really look at like what went on behind the scenes last year, Thad Young, Scottie Barnes, so much of a presence in that locker room to pull guys together, talk to guys who are struggling, talk to guys who are maybe like not having a great thing, making sure that issues get addressed. I'm sorry, but Scottie Barnes right now, to me, if you had to say, hey, grade Scottie's leadership versus Kevin Durant's leadership, I give Scottie the A+ grade on leadership. He's just born to lead. This is a leader. So I don't think that the Nets see him that way. I don't think the Nets would necessarily view him that way in a trade package. And I don't think the Nets think that their fans see him that way. And so in a weird way, I'm really happy that Scottie Barnes is not Cade Cunningham in terms of reputation. Because I'll tell you right now, even though he had a disaster season in which he posted a negative box plus minus, Cade Cunningham right now, for if the Raptors had Cade, that would be like the talking point. That would be every net fan saying, we got to get Cade back. We got to get Cade back. They're not that hyped about Scottie. And I'm so glad they're not, because that hopefully means that he's off the table. Any parting words for this? What are you hoping? Maybe like just give us your what do you hope happens here? Like, you wake up July 8th. What's the deal?
Number one, that Scottie Barnes is still a Raptor. That's number one. And you know what? Whatever happens, I trust in this management. I agree with you that there are guys, maybe not the same. We don't have the same list. I don't think that Paul George is going to be out, or Kawhi, but there's guys on the horizon. I'm fine with whatever they do, honestly. And if they don't, I want to see them, this entire team, because they have some grit to them. You're
dodging. Are you building up to tell me whether Kevin Durant is on your team on July 8th right now? Is he on the?
He's on the team. I think he's on the team.
He's on the team. And who's not on the team?
Sadly, it might be what you're saying.
Pascal?
Yeah.
Okay.
I could get behind it, but
I'll tell you what I hope happens on July 8th. I hope July 8th happens and nothing happens. I hope Kevin Durant is in Phoenix, far away from the Raptors, and hopefully far away from the finals with, a super old, and honestly, by the way, of all the play, you just suffered through 3 consistent, by the way, Kevin Durant just really knows how to pick them. I think OKC.
Why is he wanting to go to
Robert
Phoenix?
Sarver? Exactly, Sarver. Like, dude, this is the freaking weirdest thing. I think OKC is one of the weirdest teams. I want to take the last opportunity to actually plug this in. I think OKC is one of the weirdest teams I've ever been around in my life. They were such a toxic culture back in 2012, 2011 when Durant was coming up. They had this weird shit about the media. Every guy who came out of that situation, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Reggie Jackson, Kevin Durant, every one of these guys, what happened? I'm telling you, man, Sam Presti thinks this is high school, college basketball. He loves these fraternities of no adults in the room. And the fact that there are no vets on these teams sometimes, and he just believes that, these young guys can just come up together. It's the blind leading the blind, man. He doesn't see the value because he sees everyone as dots on a page. And I think sometimes you can be so smart that you become kind of blind to certain things. You have developed these massive blind spots, and because you're so smart, people don't question. I would question, where are the vets? What kind of message are you sending to your locker rooms? That's one thing, But of all the teams, he's gone through, and I think that the Golden State Warriors thing is very, nicely curated on the outside, but and Steph and Steve Kerr and all that stuff makes it work. But Bob Myers, that ownership group, they're creepy. They creep me out. There's like some serious Stepford Wives shit going on there, man. And then going to Brooklyn, it's funny because, the whole justification for going to Brooklyn for Durant was, we don't want to deal with the crap in New York, with the ownership group there and how inconsistent and how terrible they've been, and then you go to this first-time owner, and it's a disaster. And now you want to go to Robert Sarver, literally the worst owner, who just let
the guy who chooses pickles over jalapenos on nachos.
So I hope Kevin Durant is somewhere else but Phoenix, to be honest. I hope I hope for good things for Kevin Durant. He was my favorite player growing up. I love Kevin Durant. I think it's so commendable, the career he's had. I hate the fact that he's slandered. I hate the fact that people mock him and say horrible things about him. I think he's a basketball god. If I had to design a basketball player,
what do you think happens to Kyrie?
Bro, he can sail off the end of the earth. Right off. I don't fucking care. I mean, look, I used to like Kyrie Irving too. There was a stupid ass reporter in Cleveland who once asked him some question about LeBron being his father figure, and he just, the way he responded to that, exactly how I would have responded to that, was just like very blunt, like, are you fucking kidding? Like, I have a dad. And I just love that so much. And I was very, like, I felt very empathetic towards him about the vaccination situation and stuff. But some of the stuff that he's done, man, look, I have clear empathy for someone who's going through, what he's going through and stuff, with the mental health issues, but I don't care. At this point, I'm out. Like, I don't care where he ends up. I don't necessarily care where Ben Simmons ends up. I do care about Kevin Durant in this situation. I hope he ends up in a place that's good for him, right?
Yeah.
And I hope that the Raptors can put this shit behind them. And I hope they can move on with this core. Maybe add a really good piece that actually fits in place of Gary Trent Jr. And I hope that they can be competitive for the next 5 to 6 years and build this thing out organically, because I really want to cheer for a Raptor team that I grew with, not one that I felt like we cheated to get.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Any final words?
Man, thank you always for having me on. I hope that you have me on in the future. That's all.
Yeah, we're gonna see who sticks around for the end for our 2 hour and 17-minute talk. But you know what? I've gotten so many messages today from Portugal, from Italy, from people all around the world saying that this is so cool to listen to people who aren't taking cheap shots and people who are really trying to discuss the game in a deep way. So I hope, if you're one of the people, where's my eyeline? If you're one of the people, I've been looking off screen at Kenyon the whole time, but when we look at you right directly, if you're one of those people who watched it and made it to the end, please hit subscribe, hit like, hit notifications. It really does help the algorithm. And I'm saying the same thing that every YouTuber you've ever heard has said. And I understand why they say it, because we need to get this channel up to 1,000 subscribers, man. I think not enough people know about Pensare basketball. We're going to get really regular about this for the next year. I promise. I'm committed to this. I'm going to do this. Okay. And thank you, Kenyon, for being on. I really hope we don't get Kevin Durant.